Introduction asterisk. Young Robb Stark finds himself in the moment of the infamous Red Wedding, engulfed in despair and resentment. Awakening a destiny inheritance system, he opts for the talents and abilities of the legendary Shichu Baoan. Slaughter? He transforms it into a massacre against the Freys, Boltons, and Lannisters. He will shatter Westeros, ascending as the Emperor of Westeros and the Riverlands. The ominous shroud of divine will looming over humanity. Watch as I pierce it with a single strike. Chapter 1. The Red Wedding. The arrival of the namesake young wolf. A cold sensation envelopes him. It is not the dry, biting chill, but rather a viscous, slippery coldness tinged with the metallic scent of rust. It feels as though his throat is gripped tightly, a suffocating sensation coiling around him like a serpent, the shadow of death clutching at his throat with its frigid fingers, squeezing the last vestiges of life from him. Despair. Pure, unadulterated despair, akin to the frigid winds of eternal winter, flooding every inch of Robb Stark's soul. He senses his vitality swiftly ebbing away with the excruciating pain radiating from his shoulders and thighs, his vision blurring as the cacophony of music, screams, and roars fades into a distant, distorted echo. I just finished criticizing this wretched ending in the original work. Did the computer malfunction and transport me? And into the body of the namesake young wolf? Right here at the scene of the Red Wedding, a surge of terror and resentment from his past life, mingled with the original Robb Stark's final rage and humiliation, erupts within him like molten lava beneath a volcano, desperately seeking an escape. He cannot accept it. The Stark family cannot accept it. The North cannot accept it. Honor? Loyalty? How laughable they are in the face of betrayal. The Freys, Boltons, and Lannisters have sullied the rights of guests with their despicable schemes, trampling Stark's glory into the mud. This humiliation, this anger, this overwhelming hatred nearly ignites the remnants of his consciousness. Just as Robb's awareness is on the brink of being devoured by the abyss of darkness, as despair threatens to extinguish the last flicker of his soul's fire, a sudden resonance fills the air. A peculiar vibration resonates, not from the outside world, but emanating from the deepest recesses of his soul. It feels as if an ancient, slumbering beast awakens with a thunderous roar. Then, a cold, indifferent voice, clear as a bell, reverberates within his mind. Detected the host's profound resentment and monumental turning point of fate. Fate inheritance system activated. Please choose a predecessor to inherit their talents, abilities, and the weight of their destiny. Embark on the path of legend, or succumb to despair. With this proclamation, Robb's once muddled thoughts are instantly illuminated by 8 radiant orbs of light. Like 8 burning stars, they tear through the veil of death, descending with grandeur. Each orb radiates a distinct yet equally formidable aura, ancient, majestic, and powerful enough to send shivers through the soul. Within the orbs, 8 towering phantoms are faintly discernible, their gazes sharp, profound, fierce, and wise, as if they pierce through the fabric of time and space, focusing on his fading spirit. The first orb on the left, an emperor clad in a brilliant yellow dragon robe, crowned and exuding an aura as vast as the sea, his gaze sharp as a celestial blade, every gesture enveloped in the majesty of unprecedented achievement. Emperor Taizong Li Shimin. His aura is grand, yet it conceals the cunning of a ruler above all beings. The second orb on the left, a rugged figure, weathered by time, with a gaze as deep as an ancient well, clad in coarse linen, yet unable to hide the overwhelming will that sweeps through the world. The Hongwu Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang. His presence carries the fierceness of a grassroots leader and the resoluteness of an emperor, exuding an aura of menace. The third orb on the left, a figure clad in obsidian armor, with a visage as cold as a 1,000-year-old glacier, his eyes devoid of human emotion, a mere glance conjuring visions of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, an almost palpable killing intent radiating from him. The god of war Bai Qi, an embodiment born solely for war and slaughter. The fourth orb on the left, a tall figure, exuding tranquility akin to a mountain, with keen eyes like an eagle, as if the cosmos and battlefield strategies were laid out before him in a game of chess. The war sage Han Xin. His wisdom shines brightly, compelling admiration. The first orb on the right, a general in full battle gear, exuding an aura as profound as the depths of a chasm, his gaze capable of piercing through the fog of war, embodying the perfect blend of scholarly wisdom and commanding authority. The war god Li Jing. Invincible in battle, his might is unparalleled. The second orb on the right, a figure standing tall like a pine, with a gaze filled with righteous indignation, seeming to bear the weight of a shattered kingdom and royal suspicions, a phantom of a spear humming ominously behind him, embodying loyalty and unyielding resolve. General Yue Fei, his integrity and combat prowess are nothing short of legendary. The third orb on the right, a colossal figure clad in dark gold armor, his wild mane flowing like a lion's, wielding a massive, awe-inspiring dark golden dragon spear. His dual-colored eyes burn with a fierce defiance, as if ready to challenge the heavens themselves. Just one phantom emanates a ferocity that seems poised to tear the sky asunder and shatter the earth, nearly crushing Robb's very soul. The Overlord Xiangyu, with strength that could topple mountains and a presence that commands respect. Chapter 2. The Awakening of Sovereign Inheritance. The fourth orb on the right, equally majestic as a mountain, his countenance shrouded in an aura of ferocity, his eyes like a tiger stalking its prey, wielding a peculiar, heavy weapon, the Yuang spear, radiating an unadulterated, primal force born for battle, as if one alone could break armies and traverse legions. General Li Cunxiao, a king not of dominance, but of valor. 8 names, 8 forces capable of shaking the world and disrupting the cosmos, stand like 8 towering mountains in the brink of Robb's collapsing consciousness, awaiting his choice. Time seems to stretch infinitely in this moment. Outside, the carnage continues unabated. Lady Caitlin is brutally trampled, her hoarse cries of Robb, echoing in despair as she watches her son, besieged by countless arrows, her heart frozen in terror. Young John Umber, using raw strength, flips a long table, temporarily shielding the fallen Robb, though he himself is struck by several crossbow bolts, staggering yet fiercely brandishing a lamb leg snatched from a fallen soldier, resembling a mad tiger. His leather armor drenched in blood. Ser Wendell Manderley has already fallen, his corpulent body serving as a makeshift barricade. Lucas Blackwood, Robin Flint. One by one, the northern nobles fight valiantly amidst shock and fury, yet they are no match for the ambush prepared for slaughter. The soldiers of House Frey and the traitors of House Bolton laugh menacingly as they wield their swords and axes, hacking at the meager Stark guards attempting to form a defense. Ser Lyman Frey, accompanied by more fully armed soldiers, storms into the hall, the glint of axe blades sealing off all exits. Kill them all. Leave not a single one. A voice bellows in fury. Death looms ever closer. A choice. One must choose immediately. Robb's soul roars. At this moment, the memories of the youth and the will of the young wolf lord meld perfectly. He shall survive. He shall seek vengeance. He demands that all traitors pay the most excruciating price. The path of an emperor? No, distant waters cannot quench a nearby fire. Gods of war, wisdom is indeed paramount. Yet what is required now is absolute power. The kind of strength that can immediately shatter this predicament. The god of death, Bai Qi, his ferocity may be excessive. He is unlikely to be a choice for lasting peace. Yue Fei, his integrity is unparalleled, but his fate seems steeped in tragedy. Robb Stark desires no tragedy. He seeks victory. He aims to crush. Li Cunxiao, brave indeed, yet he appears to lack something. Xiangyu, is it not the furious blaze in his dual-colored eyes that embodies the spirit of defiance, never bowing down? Is it not the audacity that can uproot mountains, meant to crush all who dare to oppress or insult? Is not the pinnacle of military strategy the explosive force that erupts from desperate circumstances, obliterating all in its path? Xiangyu, in the depths of his soul, Robb summoned every last remnant of his strength to unleash a silent yet thunderous cry. The Hegemon of Western Shu. It is you. Boom. In the instant of his focused intent, within the sea of thought, the crimson golden orb representing Xiangyu erupted with a cataclysmic brilliance, as if millions of suns detonated simultaneously within his soul. A torrent of indescribable, ferocious power surged forth, carrying the ancient, primordial aura, the resolute will of desperate resolve, the unparalleled might that could uproot mountains, alongside countless fragmented memories of unyielding armies charging forth, like a deluge breaching the heavens, transforming into the most tempestuous flood of knowledge and power, mercilessly, irrepressibly inundating Robb's battered body. Ugh, hi. Robb tilted his head back, his neck veins protruding like a fearsome dragon. A cry that transcended human utterance erupted from the depths of his ravaged throat. Not merely the vibration of vocal cords, but a soul forcefully torn asunder, shattered, then violently remolded, forged anew under the overwhelming primordial might, a lament of agony. Pain, an indescribable agony engulfed every cell. He felt as though his body were a substandard vessel, instantly inflated to its limit, every bone groaning with a painful crack, as though it might splinter into pieces at any moment. Every muscle fiber was being madly ripped apart, elongated, then infused with a boiling, volcanic essence of rebirth, forcibly reconstituted. His skin stretched to near transparency, the flowing veins beneath visible, the substance coursing through them no longer mere blood, but molten metal. Veins pulsated beneath his skin like living entities, twisting and writhing, threatening to burst forth from this fragile shell. Power, an unprecedented, terrifying force capable of shaking mountains and rivers, raged and thrived within him. This power was so foreign, so tyrannical, imbued with a primal urge to destroy everything. It surged like a rampaging primordial beast, crashing through his narrow veins, seeking an outlet for its wrath. This tempestuous force resonated fatally with the smoldering anger and desire for destruction that still burned within his chest. As if dry tinder met fierce flames, it ignited explosively. The banquet has only just begun. Scum, are you ready to feel my wrath? The blood-red wedding, at this moment, welcomed its true protagonist. Slaughter? No, it is the dawn of retribution. The banquet of carnage belonging to the Hegemon makes its grand entrance here. Chapter 3. The Wolf King Lives. What sound is that? Is the boy still not dead? It matters not. I shall cleave the table as well. A soldier of House Frey, consumed by rage and splattered with blood of unknown origin, grinned savagely as he raised his heavy battle axe. Aimed at the area where Robb lay, covered in arrows and debris from the table, ready to bring it down with a ferocious blow. In his mind, regardless of what lay beneath, splitting it in two could never be wrong. The Lord commanded that no northern bastard be spared. The axe whistled through the air, heralding death. Just as the blade was about to make contact with the table, an earth-shattering explosion erupted, as if an ancient beast had awakened and roared within the confined space. The heavy table, laden with arrows and resting upon Robb, was suddenly hurled into the air by an unimaginable, pure force from within. It soared like a projectile from a catapult, tumbling and disintegrating, splintered wood and broken arrows scattering like a deadly storm. Smoke and dust enveloped the scene, fragments of wood swirling amidst the chaos. In the midst of the horrified gazes of onlookers, a figure slowly rose from the center of the haze. It was still that iconic mane of fiery red hair, still the youthful visage of Robb Stark, the young wolf. Yet, everything had changed. His form appeared more upright and formidable, the tattered armor of the dire wolf clinging to his muscular frame, which pulsed with explosive power, as if every fiber had been remade, harboring the terrifying strength to shake mountains. The blood that once flowed from him seemed to have been evaporated by some searing inner force. Most unsettling of all was his gaze. Those once clear ice blue eyes now burned with an inferno that seemed capable of incinerating the world, akin to the depths of an ancient frozen abyss igniting with fervent flames. The ultimate coldness intertwined with unfathomable heat, erupting into boundless ferocity, overwhelming rage, and an air of supreme indifference, as if a deity surveyed mere ants, exuding an unparalleled majesty. This was not the gaze of Robb Stark, the young wolf. This was the gaze of a conqueror. His voice, hoarse and deep, resonated, "You all deserve to die." The nearest Frey soldier, wielding the heavy axe, felt the weight of that inhuman gaze upon him. An unprecedented chill surged from his feet to the crown of his head, rendering his limbs cold and stiff, as primal fear gripped him, compelling him to stagger backward, nearly losing his grip on the axe. Yet soon, the greed for reward and fear of Frey's command overwhelmed his momentary terror. His face contorted, and he let out a blustering roar to bolster his courage. "You're just putting on a show. Die, wolf pup." With renewed vigor, he swung the heavy axe toward Robb's head with reckless abandon. The wind howled ominously. In the face of this blow, capable of splitting shields, Robb did not even deign to glance. His right hand, as swift as lightning, reached out not to block, but in a fleeting moment, with unparalleled precision, effortlessly grasped the sturdy handle beneath the descending axe blade. What? The sinister grin on the soldier's face instantly froze, transforming into sheer terror. He felt as though his full-force strike had cleaved into a mountain of steel. The tremendous recoil shattered his grip, blood gushing forth, while his opponent's arm remained utterly unmoved. How could this be possible? What unfathomable strength was this? In the next moment, he scarcely perceived Robb's movement, only feeling an incomprehensible, irresistible surge of power emanating from the axe handle. Robb merely twisted his wrist with a fierce motion. Crack! The stout oak handle, in his grasp, succumbed like a fragile reed, emitting a mournful cry of overstrain as it was mercilessly snapped. Following this, Robb reversed his grip on the severed, blood-stained handle, effortlessly thrusting it forward. The motion was succinct, violent, and efficient. With a sickening sound, the sharp wood splinter and the heavy axe blade effortlessly tore through the soldier's metal collar, precisely and thoroughly embedding itself into his throat. The soldier's eyes bulged wide, filled with an absurd and incomprehensible terror. He emitted a few broken, gasping sounds, blood gushing like a fountain from his mouth and wounds, as his body crumpled backward, crashing to the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. Instant annihilation. A complete and utter obliteration. The entire sequence unfolded in the blink of an eye. From seizing the axe, snapping the handle to the counterattack, flowing seamlessly, even possessing a cruel sense of artistry. It was an absolute disregard for life, governed by sheer power. The once boisterous, blood-soaked hall seemed to fall into a momentary silence. All who witnessed this scene, be they Frey, Bolton's traitors, or the remaining northern nobles struggling in despair, felt a chilling dread surge from their spines to the nape of their necks. What kind of monster is this? A monster! Another nearby Frey soldier shrieked, terror overwhelming him as he turned to flee. Yet, as he took a single step, a shadow darted past like a wraith. Robb employed no weapon, merely delivering a straightforward punch. Thud! That punch struck solidly against the soldier's backplate. There was no sound of bones fracturing, no cries of agony, just an unbearably dull, teeth-gritting explosion of sound. The soldier's chest grotesquely bulged forward, a clear imprint of a fist appearing indented in his armor. He was as if struck head-on by a stampeding giant, soaring several meters into the air, as fragments of his innards and blood traced a tragic arc before crashing into several comrades, landing in a mangled heap. Power. Pure. Savage. An all-encompassing force that crushed everything. Hiss! A sharp intake of breath echoed through the hall, momentarily stifling the aura of the slaughterer. The remaining warriors of the north, including young Jon Snow, gazed in stunned disbelief at the figure before them, reminiscent of a god of war. Their eyes sparkled with ecstatic incredulity. Robb! It is Robb! He cried out hoarsely. Nearly brought to tears, the Wolf King yet lives. Long live the North! The few remaining Stark loyalists roared with newfound vigor, their spirits reignited. Chapter 4. Roose Bolton. Show me your heart. Just then, a commotion stirred at the entrance of the hall. A man clad in a pale red cloak speckled with blood, his black plate armor beneath it contrasting starkly with his pallid, cold visage, strode in briskly, flanked by a cadre of elite Bolton soldiers. It was the infamous Flayer, Roose Bolton. His previously calm demeanor, tinged with a hint of cruel satisfaction, froze upon encountering the figure standing defiantly at the center of the hall, radiating an oppressive aura. For the first time, astonishment and disbelief flickered in his icy gray eyes. The plan had gone awry. How could Robb Stark possibly still be alive and transformed into something so terrifying? Robb slowly turned, his gaze locking onto Roose Bolton amidst the crowd. A cold, cruel smirk curved his lips, laced with mockery and intent to kill. Lord Bolton, Robb's voice, though low, pierced through the clamor, resonating clearly in Bolton's ears, each word like an icicle piercing his heart. Have you come in haste to represent Lord Tywin, or that regicide Jaime Lannister, to deliver your despicable greetings? Roose Bolton's complexion paled further, instinctively retreating a half-step, his fingers tightening around the hilt of his sword. A master of schemes. Accustomed to lurking in the shadows and manipulating events from behind the scenes, he had never before been so brazenly exposed. His faade torn asunder by such oppressive and humiliating words. He wished to speak, to offer some clever retort, or issue an immediate command to attack. But Robb would not grant him that opportunity. Let me see. Robb's voice grew ominously low and violent, akin to a volcano on the brink of eruption. Your heart. His body leaned slightly forward, adopting a poised stance, the sudden surge of murderous intent leaving every soldier around him breathless. What color is it, after all? Bang! The ground seemed to tremble. Robb's figure vanished from sight. No, he did not disappear. His speed was so remarkable that he left behind a blur, crashing through the soldiers attempting to block his path. Those soldiers were struck down like rag dolls, screams of agony echoing as they were flung aside, bones shattered, still black. As the last word fell, Robb appeared before Roose Bolton as if by teleportation. The layers of guards that once separated them were rendered utterly meaningless. Bolton's pupils contracted wildly, the utmost fear of death prompting him to draw his sword in defense, while desperately attempting to retreat. Yet it was too slow. Before Robb, his movements resembled those of a sluggish snail. Robb's right hand curled into a claw, as if a golden glow surged beneath his skin, and a fierce, scorching aura erupted in an instant. "Release me." A roar, suppressed for far too long and imbued with boundless fury and wrath, finally escaped Robb's lips, reverberating through the hall like a dragon's roar, causing the very walls to tremble. His fingers, infused with the primal force of a conqueror, appeared no longer as mere flesh and blood, but rather as 5 terrifying steel spikes, glowing white-hot. Ignoring the icy blade and the rigid plate armor, they plunged forward, relentless and unyielding. Screech! An ear-piercing metallic rending sound erupted, capable of making all present feel their scalps tingle and their souls quiver. The robust armor, forged from fine steel and capable of withstanding ordinary blades, was torn asunder beneath the sheer, unrestrained might of Robb's claw, as if it were nothing more than tattered cloth ripped apart by immense force. A gaping, terrifying wound, edged with jagged metallic shards, instantly appeared on Bolton's cold chest plate. The shattered armor crumpled inward, swiftly slicing through the linen shirt and flesh beneath. But this was merely the beginning. Robb's fingers, like a force of nature, broke through all barriers, plunging deeply and fiercely into Bolton's chest. The searing power instantly incinerated flesh and blood. Bolton emitted the most anguished, excruciating scream of his life, his eyes bulging as if they might burst from their sockets. Then, under the horrified, frozen gazes of countless witnesses, Robb's arm yanked back violently. With a sickening squelch, accompanied by the agonizing ripping sound and Bolton's abruptly silenced wail, a heart, still twitching, dripping blood, and even faintly pulsating, was forcibly extracted from Bolton's chest. Heart ripped from the body. Bolton's face was frozen in sheer agony and disbelief. His body swayed, then fell backward with a thud, splattering blood across the ground. In that moment, time within the blood-soaked wedding hall seemed to come to a complete standstill. The carnage abruptly halted. All eyes were fixated on Robb Stark's raised hand, which clutched the bloodied heart, and the lifeless body before him, marked by a gaping wound in its chest. The members of House Frey and House Bolton wore expressions of frozen malice, their courage evaporating in an instant, as if their blood had turned to ice. They beheld the figure of the red-haired warrior, eyes akin to a demon, grasping their leader's heart, and an overwhelming terror, like the coldest tide, swiftly engulfed their souls. Trembling, a shudder that emanated from the deepest recesses of their beings. Massacre? No. From this moment forth, it is the hour of the tyrant's hunt. Next, Chapter 5, Slaying Old Walder Frey, the spear that shatters 1,000 armies. The last vestige of color drained from the age-spotted visage of old Walder Frey. He watched in horror as Roose Bolton was brutally disemboweled, a sight so terrifying it shattered all his plots and foolish hopes. What of the Lord of the River Crossing? What of his grand ambitions? In the face of absolute power and death, they are nothing but nonsense. Flee. He must flee. His corpulent form unleashed an unprecedented potential, screaming as he shoved aside the stunned attendants, scurrying like a terrified, plump rat towards the small door at the side of the hall. There lay a secret passage leading to safety. As long as he survived, as long as he could escape, a voice, cold and thunderous, pierced through the cacophony of screams and the clashing of weapons, striking old Walder's eardrum and the hearts of every traitor present. Robb did not even glance at the grotesquely fleeing figure. His gaze swept across the battlefield, suddenly reaching out to seize a heavy polearm from the corpse of a fallen Bolton soldier. The weapon, now in his grasp, resonated with a satisfying weight, sending a joyful hum of power coursing through him. Buzz! His arm muscles bulged instantly, as primal, ferocious strength surged forth like a roaring torrent, unreservedly pouring into the spear. The rough wooden shaft seemed barely able to withstand such raw force, emitting a faint groan. In the next moment, Robb harnessed his core, his body taut like a drawn bow, every movement embodying the aesthetics of power and the sublime simplicity of violence. Whoosh! The spear was released. It transformed into a bolt of black lightning that tore through the air, propelled by an indomitable will and a piercing shriek, covering dozens of paces in an instant. Along its path, 2 of the Frey loyalists attempted to raise their shields in defense. Their heavy oak shields, along with their chainmail, were effortlessly pierced as if they were mere parchment. Splatter! Splatter! Blood gushed forth, and they were lifted without a sound, pinned against a nearby pillar by the immense kinetic force. Yet the streak of death showed no signs of abating. Old Walder Frey had just grasped the ring of the secret passage when an overwhelming chill and terror seized him. His corpulent body stiffened as he slowly turned his head. What met his wide, terror-stricken, murky eyes was the ever-approaching, icy spear tip. No! He let out a half-hearted, despairing cry. Thud! The heavy spear tip penetrated precisely through his wide, horrified eyes. The devastating force obliterated everything in its path. Unyielding, it burst forth. A mix of red and white matter exploding from the back of his skull. Thud. A dull sound echoed. Old Walder Frey's corpulent form was propelled backward by the tremendous power of the spear, like a tattered sack, humiliatingly and forcefully pinned against the cold stone wall behind him. The barrel trembled violently, emitting a low, resonant hum. The Lord of Riverrun, one of the architects of the blood-soaked wedding, met his tragic end without uttering a single complete farewell, concluding his sordid and protracted existence in the most harrowing and shocking manner imaginable. The grand hall fell once more into a deathly silence. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Both the rebels and the remnants of the northern forces were utterly daunted by this thunderous, precise, and ruthless strike. Robb slowly retracted his throwing posture, and wherever his gaze fell, the rebel soldiers quaked in fear, as if plunged into an icy abyss. His voice thundered like rolling thunder, resonating in the ears of all. Imbued with an undeniable authority and overwhelming intent to kill, lose Bolton. Old Walder Frey is dead. Northerners, Riverlanders, brothers who still draw breath, arm yourselves. Follow me. Annihilate these treacherous, sacrilegious rebels. Blood debts must be repaid in blood. His roar ignited the powder keg of suppressed fury and humiliation, transforming it into a raging battle spirit and flames of vengeance. For the young wolf. For the North. John Umber, heedless of the arrows embedded in his body, was the first to unleash a thunderous roar. Seizing a battle axe from the ground, he struck down a dazed Frey soldier with ferocity. Kill. Avenge our fallen brothers. The remaining Stark loyalists, the Mormonts, and other steadfast nobles echoed the battle cry, solidifying a line that had been on the brink of collapse, and they launched a frenzied counterattack. Robb had no time to assess the injuries of his mother, Catelyn. He understood that only through swift action and relentless slaughter could he intimidate the enemy, rescue the loyalists surrounded and divided, and turn the tide of this desperate battle. Movement was imperative. His eyes scanned the ground, landing upon a heavy war spear, one belonging to a Bolton guard. Its menacing design and considerable weight were precisely to his liking. He bent down to retrieve it, and the moment he grasped the spear, a profound connection surged within him. With precision, he skewered the heads of Luz Bolton and Old Walder Frey. Bloody, terrifying, yet carrying the most immediate of deterrents. Chapter 6. The Fall of Riverrun. Surrenderers shall face no death. Those who turn their blades shall be rewarded. Robb's voice was as frigid as ice, yet laced with a hint of temptation. Those who continue to resist shall be utterly annihilated. Before his words fully dissipated, he became a bolt of lightning, plunging into the heart of the Frey and Bolton loyalist camp. There, Black Walder Frey and Raymond Frey, two fierce champions, were attempting to muster a final stand. Accompanied by a dozen of the most elite guards, clad in full-plate armor, they charged towards Robb with a reckless disregard for death, swords and battle axes striking simultaneously, sealing off all avenues of escape. In response, there arose a roar reminiscent of ancient, primal beasts. The heavy war spear in Robb's grasp felt as light as a feather, suddenly transforming into a black tempest that tore through everything in its path. A deafening wind of death swirled instantly among the enemy ranks. Swift, too swift, surpassing the limits of human reflexes. The spearhead swept horizontally, carrying forth an overwhelming force that crushed all in its wake. The crescent blade forged from cold iron sliced through the first two advancing guards as effortlessly as a hot knife through butter, silently cleaving their midsections. With a sickening crunch, their sturdy plate armor was easily rent asunder, and blood mixed with fragments of entrails erupted violently. The upper bodies of the two men nearly separated, collapsing to the ground in anguish. With a flick of his wrist, the massive spearhead surged forth like a venomous dragon unleashed, the armor-piercing tip emitting a piercing shriek as it precisely penetrated the thickest part of Black Walder's breastplate. With a sickening thud, the tip emerged unimpeded from his back. The terror in Black Walder's eyes solidified as he was violently propelled by the immense force contained within the war spear, flung aside like a broken doll, crashing into a throng of rebels. Raymond, witnessing the instant demise of Black Walder, felt his courage shatter utterly, emitting a half-hearted, piercing scream as he turned to flee. Robb did not pursue. He merely lowered his wrist sharply, and the massive spearhead, like a force of nature capable of splitting the earth, came crashing down. With a sickening crunch, Raymond's helmet, along with the skull within, shattered like a watermelon struck by a heavy hammer, bursting apart in an explosion of red and white, mingling with shards of metal, scattering chaos in all directions. Where the war spear struck, there was no resistance. Robb, like a god of war, descended from the heavens, carved a bloody path through the dense enemy ranks. In his wake, severed limbs flailed, and anguished cries echoed endlessly. The northern warriors behind him followed closely, surging like a torrent unleashed, mercilessly slashing at the rebels who, witnessing their leader's demise and Robb's formidable prowess, fell into utter confusion and panic. "Surrender. We surrender. Spare us. I pledge my loyalty to Lord Stark. It was the Freys who forced us." The morale of the rebels crumbled entirely. Faced with such incomprehensible terror, compounded by the fall of their leaders, surrender and defection became their only recourse. Many discarded their weapons, kneeling in supplication, while some, desperate for survival or reward, turned their weapons against the die-hard loyalists who had once been their comrades. Robb paid no heed to those kneeling in surrender. His objective was clear: to cut through to the wedding tent. There, more of his loyal followers were besieged, and his direwolf, Grey Wind, awaited him. Even Arya seemed to be there. He was like the embodiment of death, each swing of his spear inevitably unleashing a downpour of blood, clearing entire areas. The power of a conqueror surged within him, roaring with unyielding vigor, showing no signs of fatigue. At last, he broke through the main stronghold, bursting into the courtyard, charging fiercely toward the direction of the grand tent. His arrival instantaneously altered the tide of battle. The besieged soldiers of the north erupted in thunderous cheers, while the insurgents were gripped by terror. Robb even caught sight of a petite and familiar figure, wielding a small sword, valiantly resisting under the protection of a towering silhouette, later revealed to be the Hound, though his identity was not disclosed at that moment. It was Arya. She was alive. The battle transformed into a relentless onslaught, a merciless purge. Under the command of Robb, an unstoppable spearhead, the loyal soldiers unleashed an extraordinary 200% of their fighting spirit. The insurgents either surrendered in droves or fled in disarray. Ultimately, as the waning sunlight bathed the twins in a crimson hue, the resistance within the castle had nearly quelled. The fortress had changed hands. Within the hall, the courtyard, and beneath the castle walls, corpses lay strewn about, the majority belonging to the Freys and the Boltons, along with their most devoted adherents. Blood pooled into streams, flowing into the drainage ditches, producing a gurgling sound, while the air was thick with a nauseating stench of blood. Robb stood atop the highest point of the keep, his feet resting upon the banner of House Frey. He was drenched in blood, his war spear pointed towards the ground, with crimson droplets slowly cascading from the blade. The 3,500 elite soldiers he had brought were now diminished by more than half, a heavy toll indeed. Yet, the cost to the insurgents was even more catastrophic, with over 2,000 slain and more than 4,000 surrendering or being captured, many of whom had defected mid-battle. A chilling wind tousled his crimson hair as he gazed down upon the castle that had just endured a baptism of blood and fire. Revenge had only just begun. Lannisters, are you prepared? Chapter 7. Institutions forged the foundation of dominance. Iron-fisted purge agony gnawed at Robb's nerves like a wretched parasite, with every breath eliciting a searing pain from multiple wounds. The dizziness from blood loss surged like a relentless tide, repeatedly attempting to pull him into the abyss of darkness. The edges of his vision began to fade to black, while sounds oscillated between clarity and muddled distortion, as if filtered through a thick veil of water. Yet, his upright figure stood as steadfast as the tallest tower of the twins, unwavering. "The defense, the captives, are entrusted to you." Robb's voice emerged hoarse, yet undeniably clear and powerful, piercing through the moans of the wounded in the courtyard and the hurried footsteps of the soldiers. His gaze fell upon Great John Umber, the loyal and valiant, yet somewhat rash commander, whose face was now a blend of fervent admiration and unquenched martial spirit. "The uninjured warriors of the north are under your command." Robb's eyes swept over the distant crowd of captives, closely monitored and utterly desolate, encompassing all prisoners, including those who had defected during the fray and members of House Westerling. "Segregate them, maintain strict vigilance. Any sign of unrest shall be met with lethal force." He paused, suppressing another wave of dizziness, and continued to issue orders. "Crossbows, catapults, all in position and on alert. Immediately establish watchtowers on the periphery and restore the signal fires. I must ensure that any enemy attack from any direction is visible at the first sign of smoke." "Aye, your grace." Great John pounded his chest and roared, his voice resonating like a great bell, casting a gaze at Robb filled with an almost totemic devotion. The young wolf lord before him was no longer the boy of yesteryear. He had emerged from the crucible of blood and fire as a conqueror, his commands embodying the will of the North. Arya Stark turned to the other side. His sister, that wild girl from his memories who delighted in scaling walls and dancing with swords, was now crouched amidst mud and blood, her petite, yet resolute face speckled with blood and ash. She was meticulously using a delicate little scissor salvage from the Frey household to cut through the hardened, blood-soaked leather armor of a northern warrior who had been struck in the abdomen, her movements focused and swift, devoid of any tremor. Upon hearing the voice, she looked up. Despite the fatigue evident in her bloodshot eyes, they shone brightly like cold stars, unwavering in determination. Take a small number of the uninjured to tend to the wounded and prepare hot meals. Account for all seized weapons, armor, gold, silver, provisions, fabrics, and medicines. Nothing must be overlooked. Robb's voice softened slightly, yet retained an undeniable authority. Organize the remaining civilians in the city. Tell them to work for me, clearing the battlefield, transporting supplies, and caring for the injured. They shall not labor in vain, for they will be compensated, should they prove their worth. I shall not hesitate to grant them titles and lands. His gaze swept over those battle-worn warriors who persisted despite their injuries, and his voice rose suddenly, echoing through the courtyard like thunder. The rest of the wounded, immediately. Go, tend your injuries. Bandage yourselves. Sleep. This is a military command. Your lives are not your own. They are the sharpest spears of the north. Heal yourselves. The blood battles of the future will not lack for your opportunities to spill blood. A series of clear and effective commands were issued, and the surviving northern forces within Riverrun began to function like finely tuned gears of war, swiftly engaging in their tasks. Great John bellowed as he led men towards the walls and armory. Arya responded crisply, immediately directing a few women to set up large pots for boiling water. The injured were either supported or carried by comrades to relatively clean shelters away from the rain. Until that moment, Robb's will, taut like a drawn bowstring, had only slightly relaxed. Yet, in that moment of loosening, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over him, robbing him of all sensory perception. His towering form swayed imperceptibly, and darkness engulfed his vision. He did not fully collapse, but in the midst of his guards' terrified exclamations, he forcefully planted his blood-stained war spear into the ground to support himself, growling, "Help me inside for a moment." When he opened his eyes once more, dawn was breaking. The cold drizzle continued to patter against the stone window, bringing the chill of late autumn. Having rested for less than 2 hours, Robb forcibly dispelled the heaviness and fatigue from his body. The inhuman recuperative power bestowed by his lineage as a conqueror began to manifest. Although the wounds remained gruesome and painful, a fresh, searing strength was burgeoning within his flesh, fueling his resolve. He wasted not a moment. Rising to don a fresh ensemble of black attire, draping himself in a cloak adorned with the emblem of the iceborn wolf, concealing much of the bandaging that swathed his form. His complexion remained pallid. He meticulously inspected the battlements, greeting those vigilant sentinels who had endured the night without rest. With a firm pat on each warrior's shoulder, regardless of noble lineage or humble origin, he declared, "The North does not forget your loyalty." His words, though simple, stirred the weary soldiers, causing them to tremble with excitement and raise their chests with renewed pride. He traversed the infirmary tents, assessing injuries and inquiring with the healers about the sufficiency of their supplies. His presence seemed to imbue an invisible strength, alleviating the anguished groans of the wounded and rekindling the light of hope in their eyes. Fortuitously, owing to his miraculous awakening and fierce counterattack the previous day, many of the North's elite, destined to perish in the bloody wedding, had been snatched from the clutches of death. Though both Great John Umber and Small John bore wounds, their lives were spared. The valiant Daisy Mormont was still her fierce self, scolding the maester as he stitched her arm. Loyal vassals and knights such as Robin Flint, Donald Noy, Patrick Mallister, and Lucas Blackwood, all injured, had survived. Upon seeing Robb enter, they all struggled to salute him, their eyes brimming with the fervor of survival and an even stronger resolve to follow him. Regrettably, there were irrevocable losses. Brave souls like Ser Wendell Manderley had fallen forever. Yet, Robb found solace in the knowledge that Ser Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, had successfully broken through and returned to Riverrun, bringing with him a small contingent of soldiers from the Riverlands who had breached the Frey defenses to offer assistance. These battle-hardened individuals, whose loyalty and capability were beyond question, would serve as the bedrock of his future ambitions. Without hesitation, Robb commenced the appointments and reconstruction of order. He appointed the forthright and unyielding Daisy Mormont as the military judge, bestowing upon her the sort of rewards and punishments. Daisy, according to the military regulations I have established, calculate the merit points for all. I require you to be impartial. Rewards for merit and penalties for transgressions must be upheld. From this moment forth, you shall be the law of the army. Robb entrusted her with a short sword symbolizing authority. Daisy knelt, accepting the sword with resolute conviction, declaring, "At your command, your grace, the Mormont family shall never forget. Where your law points, there too shall my blade be directed. Chapter 8. Institutions forge the foundation of dominance. Iron-fisted purge. The foremost task at hand was the thorough identification of the thousands of captives. Robb personally undertook this endeavor, accompanied by the rejuvenated and increasingly formidable gray wind of the iceborne wolf. Armed with insights from 2 lifetimes and an acute perception of dynamics and public sentiment, combined with Grey Wind's extraordinary sense of smell and awareness of malice, along with the captives' mutual accusations and betrayals, an efficient yet brutal purge swiftly unfolded. At long last, over 500 individuals, fervent loyalists of the treacherous Bolton, whose hands are stained with the blood of the Northern and Riverland soldiers, have been thoroughly exposed. Their names meticulously recorded, with irrefutable evidence against them. As for the Westerling family, a chilling truth, anticipated long ago by Robb, has surfaced from the correspondence seized from old Walder's secret chamber, along with the cross-examinations conducted separately on the family members. The Westerling family has never forgotten the cruelty of the Lannisters as foretold by the Rains of Castamere. From the very beginning, they were but pawns meticulously orchestrated by Lord Tywin, with the intent of using the sweetly toxic flower, Jane Westerling, to ensnare the young Wolf Lord and obliterate the future of House Stark. Jane's ambitious mother has been employing potions and even certain dark sorceries to ensure that Jane would never conceive an heir for the king in the north, thereby severing any future claims. Only Jane herself and her brother, Renard Westerling, appear to be tragically oblivious to this nefarious scheme, seemingly mere tools exploited by their family. However, in this merciless political landscape, naivety and ignorance cannot absolve one of guilt. Robb publicly announced the findings of the investigation, his voice as cold and unyielding as iron. The Westerling family has betrayed their oath, willingly serving as the hounds of the Lannisters, conspiring against the crown. With evidence beyond dispute, henceforth, they are stripped of all titles and lands. Jane Westerling is no longer my queen. Jane was absent during the pronouncement in Riverrun. The following afternoon, the overcast sky continued to weep with cold rain. The square beneath the southern keep of Riverrun was a mire of mud. Over 500 captives, their hands bound behind them, trembled in the rain, forced to kneel in the frigid muck. Surrounding them were other captives, pale-faced and filled with terror, along with all the gathered soldiers from the north and the Riverlands. Robb Stark stood resolute in the rain, his red hair drenched and clinging to his brow, adding to his formidable presence. Clad not in ornate armor but in simple black attire, he exuded an oppressive aura of authority that eclipsed any armor. Silence. His voice, though not raised, sliced through the rain like a cold blade, penetrating the ears of every listener. Those who participated in the despicable treachery of Riverrun, violating the sacred guest right, betraying their lord for personal gain. The evidence is irrefutable. The sins are unforgivable. In the name of Robb Stark, king in the north and of the Trident, he drew his sword with a sharp clang, the cold gleam of steel piercing the dim light of the overcast sky. Execute them. There was no superfluous speech, no pretense of compassion. The order was given, and the execution commenced. The executioners were those captives kneeling nearby, their hands untainted by northern blood. They were forcibly armed and, trembling, approached their former comrades, superiors, and even kin. Strike. This was their only path to survival. The soldiers of the north stood nearby, their voices rising in fierce admonition. In that moment, the cacophony of cries, pleas for mercy, curses, and the horrifying sounds of blades penetrating flesh and bone mingled with the patter of rain, resonating throughout the square. Blood stained the muddy ground, forming slender streams of pale crimson. This was a brutal rite of passage, compelling these captives to sever ties with their past through the blood of their former comrades, irrevocably binding their fates to the chariot of Robb Stark. Simultaneously, a decree of such magnitude that it would reverberate throughout Westeros and fundamentally alter the rules of warfare was publicly proclaimed by the military judge, Lady Mormont, the War Merits and Benefits Ordinance of the North. Every soldier who fought, be they noble knight or common infantryman, whether from the north or the Riverlands, including those who later rebelled and proved their mettle during the purges, would receive merit points calculated based on their specific contributions in battle, number of enemies slain, ranks of officers captured, flags seized, comrades rescued, and positions held. These points would directly influence their future wealth, land grants, promotions, and even titles. Truly, a meritocracy where valor alone determined heroism, regardless of one's birthright. Accompanying this was the Benefits Ordinance, which left all soldiers in a state of disbelief. The families of the fallen would receive a one-time compensation of 5 golden dragons. This would be duly recorded, guaranteed by the crown, ensuring full distribution to the bereaved. When the wife of the first slain soldier, a ragged and pale peasant woman from the Riverlands, tremulously accepted the heavy pouch containing 5 gleaming golden dragons from Robb's hands, she collapsed to the ground, erupting into heart-wrenching sobs. It was not merely sorrow, but an overwhelming, unendurable shock and gratitude. 5 golden dragons. Enough to purchase a fertile farm, freeing her children from hunger and poverty. The entire square fell into a hushed silence, save for the sound of rain and the woman's stifled sobs. The eyes of all surviving soldiers were red, their breaths heavy. This unprecedented and nearly frenzied generosity, surpassing any convention in Westeros, ignited within them all the loyalty and valor that coursed through their veins like wildfire. Loyalty and valor, for the first time, were so palpably and weightily assigned a price, one so noble that they were willing to lay down their lives for it. Robb's voice rose again, overpowering the rain and the weeping. This is only the beginning. I hereby announce the implementation of a standing military pay system for the Kingdom of the North, effective immediately. He detailed the base salary standards for different ranks of troops. Upon hearing that even the lowest-ranking soldiers would receive a base salary of 1 golden dragon per year, the square fell into a profound silence, which was swiftly shattered by thunderous, fervent cheers. 1 golden dragon, a sum that many free folk families could scarcely amass in a year of hard labor. For numerous soldiers hailing from impoverished backgrounds, even those who had been serfs, this was not merely money. It represented an unprecedented dignity and recognition. They are no longer mere instruments of survival or instruments of hatred. They have become pillars of triumph, highly esteemed by the regime. When an elderly fisherman, injured from the battles of yore, trembled as he accepted a copper star and 10 silver stags, tokens of his valor in clearing the battlefield and transporting supplies, from Robb Stark. Tears mingled with rain cascaded down his weathered face. 10 silver stags were sufficient to sustain his entire family through the harsh winter ahead. The rigorous, equitable, and transparent system of merit-based rewards, coupled with a promotion structure and remarkably generous compensations, has forged an unprecedented, alluring, and cohesive war machine. All survivors have come to understand an undeniable truth. Following Robb Stark leads to hope, vigor, wealth, and dignity, an opportunity for glory and honor. The rain began to lessen. Robb stood tall upon the elevated square, surveying the fervent soldiers below, witnessing the flames of desire for wealth, the thirst for glory, and an almost blind devotion and loyalty towards him igniting in their eyes. A cold semblance appeared on his pale visage, a subtle curve suggesting that everything was within his grasp. The Lannisters sustain loyalty through gold and cunning. He, however, forges the foundation of an invincible empire through systems, hope, and absolute power. This is the path of a conqueror. The chilling raindrops fell upon his face. Yet they could not quell the seething flames of vengeance and ambition that blazed within his heart. Riverrun was merely the beginning. Each subsequent step would plunge their enemies deeper into nightmares. Chapter 9. Forging the Iron Army, Part 1. The frigid autumn rain finally ceased. Yet the air in Riverrun still reeked of unyielding iron rust and a profound atmosphere of impending doom. In stark contrast, an unprecedented surge of burgeoning power was coalescing within the city, taking shape. Upon the heights of the South Keep, Robb Stark's figure stood tall and proud, exuding undeniable authority. Clad in black, draped in the pelt of a direwolf, he commanded the attention of the surviving warriors of the North and the Riverlands, who had exchanged their earlier despondency and fury for a newfound emotion, absolute trust in the man upon the dais, a fervent longing for future bloodshed and bountiful rewards, and a rekindled flame known as hope. My warriors, Robb's voice resonated, not loud yet akin to rolling thunder, clearly penetrating the wind's howl and reaching the ears of all, directly stirring their souls. The shame of the Red Wedding has been partially cleansed with the blood of traitors. Yet, this is far from sufficient. He paused, casting a sweeping gaze across the assembly. Every warrior who met his eyes instinctively straightened their spines. The golden mines of the Lannisters continue to glimmer in the south, while the usurper still occupies the Iron Throne in King's Landing. The icy snows of the north have never forgotten their vow of vengeance, and the suffering of the Riverlands must be repaid with the wails of their enemies. But he shifted the tone of his discourse, his voice suddenly deepening with gravity. The painful lessons of experience have taught us that mere passion and ancient honor cannot dismantle the intricately woven webs of conspiracy and treachery. From this day forth, the old rules shall be buried alongside the corpses of those traitors. With a fierce motion, Robb's arm swung down decisively, declaring the complete dissolution of House Frey of Riverrun. Their lands, their castles, all power shall revert to the north and the direct authority of the King of the Trident. As these words echoed, a subtle stir arose among the crowd. Soon after, Robb's proclamation served as a potent tonic for all present, particularly for the anxious commoners and lowly soldiers of the riverlands. In the name of justice and the welfare of the people, the toll for crossing the river at Riveron shall henceforth be reduced to less than half of its original amount. Long live the king in the north. After a brief silence, a thunderous cheer erupted from the common folk and soldiers alike. The reduction in tolls signified a flourishing trade and tangible improvements in their lives. This young king not only ignited the flames of vengeance, but also kindled the hope for survival. In an instant, he swayed the hearts of many Riverlanders from fear or indecision regarding the Lannisters to rallying behind him. As his voice softened, he proclaimed that the evils stemmed from greedy decision-makers, not from all who bore the blood of House Frey. Among them, Olivar Frey and Patriarch Frey had long harbored discontent towards Walder's despicable actions and were imprisoned for their loyalty to me before the upheaval. They are innocent souls. Soon, Olivar Frey and others, who had been rescued in advance, were brought forth to the stage. Though their faces bore the pallor of imprisonment, their eyes sparkled with the exuberance of survival and boundless gratitude towards Robb. Olivar Frey, Robb gazed upon him and declared, "I appoint you as the patriarch of these innocent souls. However, the name Frey has become tainted with treachery. Thus, we shall sever all ties with the past. I bestow upon you a new surname, Riverwalker. May you remember this day of rebirth and reciprocate with loyalty and valor in your new name." What a grace and trust this is. Olivar Frey, no, Olivar Riverwalker, was instantly moved to tears. He knelt fervently, his voice trembling with emotion. "In the name of the old and new gods, I swear. Olivar Riverwalker and all my kin shall henceforth obey only the commands of His Majesty Robb. Our loyalty shall be more steadfast than the great stones of Riveron." Through a blend of benevolence and authority, Robb not only obliterated the core of the old evils, but also garnered the hearts of the people, establishing a new standard of loyalty. This series of political maneuvers drew silent admiration from those behind him, including Blackfish Brynden and Grey John, who recognized that the young wolf, having endured profound transformations, now wielded a cunning and decisiveness far beyond his years. With the Frey legacy addressed, Robb turned his focus back to the foundation of his strength, the army. Now, he commanded the remaining elite forces of the north, alongside talents identified among the captives, soldiers from the Riverlands brought by Blackfish, and the nearby populace compelled to join after being awed by the generous bounty of 5 golden dragons for the dead and 1 for the living, totaling over 6,000 souls. How might one swiftly forge this team, characterized by its intricate composition and uneven combat prowess, into an indomitable blade of vengeance? The answer lies within his relentless dedication, blending the memories of warfare from the legacy of conquerors, the military philosophies of future historians, and the transcendent wisdom of Qi Jiguang, culminating in a meticulously crafted new organization and training regimen. Without the trappings of lengthy mobilization, Robb commenced the reorganization with resolute decisiveness. Commands were issued, clear, unyielding, and astonishingly efficient. All forces were to be restructured according to the new system. The main army was to establish infantry assault battalions and cavalry assault battalions. Each infantry assault battalion was to consist of 560 men, with the foundation being a 10-man killer squad for agile fighters and 6 polearm wielders for killer squads, supplemented by 2 archer teams, would form a company of 60. 5 such companies, along with a direct unit, including 3 archer teams, 2 polearm squads, and 1 agile squad, would constitute a combat detachment of 360. 4 combat detachments, combined with the battalion commander's direct staff of 120, would form a complete infantry assault battalion. The same rigorous structure was applied to the cavalry assault battalion, with the corps shifting to mobile iron steeds. Even the most seasoned veterans, such as Grey John, found themselves somewhat dazzled by the precision of this structure. Yet, this meticulous organization evoked an unprecedented sense of awe among all officers with any semblance of insight. No longer was this an army reliant on the valor of noble knights and the frantic charge of farmer conscripts. This was a finely tuned, efficient killing machine, born for war. Chapter 10, Forging the Iron Army, Part 2. Robb's voice resonated like a hammer, embedding every formation into the minds of all present. The pure battalion was akin to a colossal beast, formidable yet unwieldy. The agile battalion resembled a pack of wolves, nimble yet perilously fragile. Thus, the infantry was organized into pure battalions, unified in their type, meticulously arranged, prepared for future battles in the vast wilderness. For everyday operations and complex terrains, the foundation would be the killer squads and companies, flexibly coordinating with combat detachments as if they were extensions of one's own limbs. The cavalry was to be trained to the standard of versatile knights. I seek riders who can shoot, charge, and engage in ground combat, not merely lumbering behemoths that charge headlong. He then elaborated on the responsibilities and equipment of each unit. The polearm soldiers, armed with long spears and glaives. You shall become a moving forest of death. A wall of spears shall repel the foe, and your glaives shall rend their armor. Strict orders. Form ranks as solid as mountains. Advance and retreat in unison. Where the polearms point, there lies an impregnable fortress. The archers, wielding longbows and carrying long swords. Your arrows must precisely target enemy officers, suppress opposing archers, and rain down fire upon their ranks. I demand a tempest of arrows, not aimless volleys. The agile soldiers. Robb's voice rose here, dividing them into sword and shield bearers and breach specialists. Sword and shield bearers, equipped with iron round shields and half swords. I shall impart to you the secret technique of the rolling sword and shield method. At this declaration, the crowd gasped in astonishment. Rolling? On the ground? Indeed, that is precisely what I mean. Robb declared fiercely, targeting the lower paths. Infiltrate the gaps in the spear formations, sever the horse's legs, pierce the horse's belly, and strike at the enemy's joints. Like a scorpion stinging beneath the armor, I command you to become the nightmare of heavy cavalry and phalanx formations. The breaker of lines. Wield your colossal swords, heavy axes, and warhammers. Your mission is to shatter every barrier in your path with unyielding force. All agile soldiers shall be armed with short javelins or throwing axes. Shields must withstand the deluge of arrows. When throwing, aim to crush the foe's skulls. When engaged in close combat, strike with the ferocity of a dire wolf, tearing out the enemy's throats. Train. Those who lie idly must envision their adversary's vulnerable underbelly and rise with ferocity. Crush their very essence. Such coarse and direct expressions, even bordering on the vulgar, ignite the soldier's blood more fervently than any ornate rallying cry, especially for those warriors from the lower echelons, accustomed to the brutalities of mud-soaked brawls. Their eyes spark with fervor. This method resonates deeply with their instincts. The training corps is unequivocally defined: advancing shield walls, precision throwing at mid-range, heavy weapon breaching, ground assault tactics, and coordinated skirmishes in confined spaces. Ultimately, he referenced a special unit directly under the captain's command, comprising 120 individuals. Among them, 60 are the most elite halberdier guard. Yet, they do not report to the captain. Robb's gaze shifted to the resolute figure of Lady Mormont, the military law officer. Lady Mormont. Present. Your Majesty. Daisy stepped forward, her voice resonating with authority. This contingent of 60 halberdiers, equipped with the finest war halberds and full-plate armor, is assigned to you. They are the sword of military law hanging over the entire army. Their duty, to protect senior officers, enforce discipline, and uphold battlefield regulations. I grant you and them the privilege to execute any who flee the battlefield or disobey orders before the ranks. There shall be no leniency. I, Your Majesty. Daisy accepted this heavy yet honorable responsibility, her eyes gleaming with a steely resolve. Henceforth, the discipline of the army ascended to unprecedented heights, severing ties with personal militia systems. The structure was established, and Robb personally undertook the appointments of officers. He selected the most promising and loyal warriors from the survivors, personally appointing and encouraging each squad leader. His insight seemed to pierce the hearts of men. Every name called forth elicited tremors of excitement, a profound sense of honor and responsibility. In merely 3 days, this force of over 6,000 was swiftly reorganized, weeding out the weak and elderly, dispersing and reassembling according to the new structure. Ultimately, 5,000 were chosen, forming 3 main assault units, 2 infantry and 1 cavalry, alongside a special unit. These 5,000 represent Robb's entire fortune and future hope at this moment. Thanks to the generous provisions of House Frey from the twins, these elite warriors donned iron armor, whether chainmail, scale, or ringmail, and even partial plate armor was assembled for each. Additionally, 1,000 defenders were trained, armed with polearms and crossbows, tasked with daily vigilance and operating siege equipment, becoming the cornerstone of large-scale defensive battles. Each soldier practiced the combat techniques distilled by Robb from the battlefield, pursuing ultimate efficiency in strikes and foundational killing moves, tailored to the physique of Westeros. However, the most striking element is the formidable group of just 150 members, the Robb's Kingsguard, personally led by Robb himself. The composition of this elite unit is particularly unique, comprising the core stalwarts under Robb's command, such as Great John and Blackfish. who undergo regular rotation and training, as well as those of exceptional character recommended from various combat divisions, alongside a few extraordinarily gifted youths. Among them, the remarkably swift-progressing Arya Stark emerges as the youngest member. This distinguished guard is also known by the promising name of the Ironfire Military Academy. Their training instills a sense of trepidation in all seasoned veterans. 1. Combat skills. Robb imparts advanced battlefield martial arts, derived from the legacy of the Conqueror, simplifying complexities into swift, lethal maneuvers aimed solely at the expeditious and effective elimination of adversaries, pursuing the pinnacle of efficiency and lethality. 2. Strategy. Robb personally teaches military tactics, innovatively encouraging others to assume the role of instructors, allowing officers to distill their battlefield experiences into teachings for others, thereby fostering a cycle of learning and reflection that sharpens their own acumen. 3. Willpower. Extreme physical endurance training, mountain load carrying cross-country, hunger resistance, and standing firm with arms amidst cascading torrents. They are even summoned at night to the edges of cliffs for tactical drills, honing their courage and decisiveness in life-and-death scenarios. Their purpose is impeccably clear: the sharpest blade on the battlefield, a cradle for future officers, and the most loyal cornerstone of Robb's grand ambitions. In a mere 3 days, Robb scarcely found rest, resembling a most exacting craftsman, fervently forging this nascent army with iron will and fiery determination. When he once again stood before the assembly, observing the troops below, though somewhat fatigued, their gazes sharp and formations precise, exuding a latent ferocity, he understood that his efforts were not in vain. The army's visage had undergone a remarkable transformation. A new and distinct force, unlike any in Westeros, was quietly taking shape within this blood-soaked castle. It amalgamated the valor of a conqueror, timeless wisdom, stringent discipline, and an unprecedented system of shared interests and protections. Chapter 11. Blood as Oath. In a hastily cleared hall within the stronghold, the crackling fire dispelled the chill of late autumn. Yet it could not wholly disperse the heaviness and sorrow that pervaded the air. There were no outsiders present. Only the most integral members of the Stark and Tully families: Robb, Lady Catelyn, Arya, Edmure Tully, and Blackfish Brynden Tully. The brief silence was shattered by Robb, whose voice remained steady, yet the harsh reality unfolded before his kin. The Westerlands and the Reach, an 80,000-strong coalition, are advancing northward, intent on trampling and obliterating every inch of our lands in the north and the Riverlands. Winterfell has been seized by Ramsay Bolton. A flicker of palpable malice crossed Robb's eyes at the mention of this name. Our home is being desecrated by that vile serpent. The Ironborn, like vultures, are seizing upon our weakness, continually plundering, burning, and slaughtering within our homeland. He paused momentarily, his gaze slowly sweeping over his mother's pale and haggard countenance. His sister's lips pressed tightly together, yet her eyes radiating resolve, and his uncle's heavy and anxious visage. Finally, his eyes rested upon Blackfish, whose weathered features bore the traces of hardship, yet his eyes remained sharp and discerning. The Stark family, the Tully family. Robb's voice betrayed no hint of timidity. It was a calm declaration, poised on the brink of despair. This proclamation pierced through the last vestiges of hope within each heart. Edmure instinctively clenched his fists, and Lady Catelyn's shoulders trembled slightly as she closed her eyes, seemingly unable to bear the weight of such immense pressure. Even Arya, who feared neither heaven nor earth, wore a taut expression on her youthful face. Yet, Robb's words were far from over. He shifted his tone. Perhaps the old gods could no longer bear witness to our plight. Perhaps the 7 gods also sensed the injustice. His voice took on an indescribable, almost oracular magnetism. In the most desperate moment of the Red Wedding, I gained something, a fragment of ancient power, a shard of knowledge transcending this era. He raised his hand, gently clenching it, the knuckles cracking softly as an intangible force seemed to reverberate through the air. It was this flicker of faint, improbable hope that allowed us to remain seated here at this moment. His gaze deepened profoundly. Meeting the eyes of each family member present, I recognized that in the past we have all acted irrationally, made erroneous judgments, and misinterpreted one another. Mother, you released the Kingslayer. Uncle Edmure, you have faced defeat. I, too, in my youth and stubbornness, have made incorrect decisions. His tone was solemn, imbued with a maturity that transcended his years, yet all of that is in the past. Seeking blame, harboring complaints, and wallowing in guilt will not resurrect fallen warriors. Nor will it restore Winterfell to our grasp, much less withstand the 80,000-strong army advancing northward. Now, what lies before us is but a singular choice. Robb's voice suddenly rose, akin to a sword unsheathed, embodying a resolute determination to sever all hesitation. Unity. Struggle. Not for the ephemeral glory, but for the primal, fundamental necessity of survival for our two houses. Only by enduring can we earn the right to speak of vengeance. Only then can we reclaim what rightfully belongs to us. His words struck like a hammer upon the hearts of all present. There was no blame, no deflection, only the clearest recognition of reality and the most unwavering guidance for the future. It elevated personal grievances to the gravitas of familial survival. Edmure Tully was the first to rise, the Duke of Riveron, who had endured failure and imprisonment, now devoid of his former levity. He knelt on one knee, his right hand pressed against his heart, gazing up at Robb with fervor and sincerity. Robb, my king, and also my nephew. The Tully family shall devote all the strength of Riveron to follow you to the end, to the death, unwavering. Following suit, Blackfish Brynden also sprang to his feet. The seasoned veteran, who never easily bowed, now knelt with the utmost chivalric grace. His voice resonated with the steadfastness of rock. I, Brynden Tully, shall wield my sword solely in the service of Stark and Tully. Your Majesty, wherever your will directs, there too lies my path. And then, with fervor, Arya sprang to her feet. She did not kneel. Instead, she unsheathed her small sword, known as Needle, defiantly pointing it skyward. I will become stronger than ever. With my sword, I shall vanquish all enemies. For my father, for Bran and Rickon, for our home. At last, all eyes turned to Lady Catelyn, this mother, who had endured the loss of her husband and the supposed loss of her children, while her family teetered on the brink of destruction, slowly lifted her head. Though her pale visage bore the traces of tears yet to dry, within her once sorrowful and despairing blue eyes ignited a fierce, almost frenzied light, one that signified a mother wolf's resolute determination to protect her young and defend her den. She rose, refusing to kneel, and approached Robb, extending her trembling hand to gently caress the scar on her son's cheek that had yet to fully heal. Her voice, hoarse yet strikingly clear, proclaimed, "My child, Robb Stark, head of House Stark, king in the north, Catelyn Stark, along with all the Tully blood that stands behind her, shall be with you until the final breath of our lives." The rift between kin, under the overwhelming external threat and the powerful leadership charisma displayed by Robb, instantly dissipated. A new alliance, forged on the bonds of blood and survival, was solemnly established within the warmth of that hall. However, Robb was acutely aware that certain festering wounds must be lanced and certain truths confronted. He assisted his uncle and Blackfish, his gaze returning to his mother, tinged with a barely perceptible pity, yet dominated by calmness. "Mother," he began, "regarding father and his failures in King's Landing, there is one shadow we can never evade." Catelyn's heart tightened sharply, as if sensing the impending revelation. "Peter Baelish." Robb uttered the name, his tone frigid. "Perhaps we need not delve into complex evidence. All we need do is observe how, after father's arrest and eventual murder, he remained unscathed in King's Landing, not only continuing as the master of coin but also, following the actions of the butcher's boy, being elevated by that madman Joffrey to Duke of Harrenhal, ascending to the ranks of the great nobility. All of this was sufficient to illustrate. As Robb observed the pallor draining from his mother's face, word by word, he has long betrayed father's trust. Indeed, father's death may have been one of the stepping stones upon which he climbed. With a sudden thud, Lady Catelyn staggered backward, collapsing into the chair behind her, her complexion ashen as her breath grew rapid and shallow. She had harbored doubts, yet was reluctant to contemplate or believe that the man she had regarded as a brother since childhood could be such a despicable puppeteer behind the scenes. At this moment, the deceptive veil of self-delusion was ruthlessly pierced by her son, and the gruesome truth nearly shattered her entirely. It was she who had harbored a ridiculous, naive trust in her little finger, a remnant of her youthful innocence. "It is I, Catelyn," her voice cracked, laden with boundless guilt and anguish, tears surging forth once more. "It was my foolish trust that indirectly led to Ed's demise." A profound sense of guilt engulfed her like a chilling tide, drowning her in an instant. Just then, a firm and reassuring hand rested upon her trembling shoulder. It was Robb. He offered no words of comfort, yet his voice resonated with an undeniable strength. "Guilt and pain cannot alter the past, mother, but vengeance can. Survive, and let all betrayers, all enemies, pay an unimaginable price. This is the way of the Starks and Tullys." He softened his tone, casting forth another glimmer of hope. "Moreover, we have not lost everything. Bran and Rickon are likely still alive, merely missing. Arya is here, and we shall find a way to rescue Sansa. Fight, mother. Robb's voice seemed to possess a magical quality, dispelling despair, not for the dead, but for the living, for those still hoped to be recovered. Fight! Lady Caitlin abruptly lifted her head, tears still streaming, yet the anguish in her blue eyes was gradually replaced by a similarly fervent flame named vengeance. She grasped Robb's hand fiercely, her nails nearly embedding into his flesh, nodding vigorously. In that moment, the grieving mother vanished, and in her place stood Caitlin Tully of Riveron, the mother of the king in the north, a she-wolf utterly incensed, vowing to rend apart all adversaries. The fire crackled persistently, yet the atmosphere in the hall had irrevocably transformed. Sorrow lingered, yet it morphed into fuel. Despair dissipated, replaced by a steely resolve. In the icy abyss of despair, the flames named Stark and Tully blazed anew, fueled by hatred and hope. Chapter 12, with raven feathers as blades, striking the heart from afar. Tywin Lannister excelled at forging paths with golden lions, ensnaring foes with cunning schemes, yet he was most adept at wielding letters that appeared innocuous but concealed lethal intent. Manipulating circumstances, sowing discord among allies, and executing assassinations in the shadows. Very well, Robb murmured to himself, a cold smile gracing his lips. Let you also experience the excruciating taste of being dissected by the blade of public opinion. He turned, striding purposefully towards the maester's tower. There, dozens of restless ravens flapped their wings, their legs bound with papers capable of stirring a tempest across all of Westeros. The first wave would be a thunderclap directed at the public of the Seven Kingdoms, the 10 deadly sins of the lions. Robb dictated the words himself, recorded by a loyal and sharp-witted scribe. Each word was akin to a poisoned dagger, aimed directly at the Lannister family's most unspeakable and vile transgressions. 1. The slaughter of vassals, the annihilation of humanity. The proclamation opens with a thunderous rage, resonating with the weeping rain of Castamere. The charred bones of the Tower of the Hand have yet to grow cold. How ruthless has Tywin Lannister been in his treatment of former vassals, known throughout the Seven Kingdoms. The first of his transgressions, 2 regicides, disregarding the established order. This is particularly stunning. While King Aerys certainly bore fault, he was betrayed by the very protector, Ser Jaime. Was the mishap of King Robert truly an accident? The Grand Maester was summoned to his bedside, and Lancel Lannister personally presented the wine. Evidence is attached. The evidence, of course, consists of meticulously crafted so-called testimonies and logical chains. The second sin, incest between siblings, an abomination within the court, a desecration of the gods. This accusation aims to ignite the wrath of all devout believers. Cersei and Jaime Lannister, in utter disregard of human morality, have engaged in bestial acts. Such scandal tarnishes the sacred hall of Baelor, inciting divine fury. The third sin, the corruption of bloodlines, defiling the Iron Throne, directly targeting the legitimacy of the Iron Throne. Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are all illegitimate offspring born of incest. What right do they possess to usurp the highest authority in Westeros? This is a profound disgrace to the Seven Kingdoms. The fourth sin, the slaughter of innocents, an act of tyranny, striving for the broadest support. The Riverlands have turned to scorched earth, and wherever Gregor Clegane treads, not even a chicken or dog remains. This is not the conduct of warriors, but the deeds of demons. The fifth sin, a violation of guest rights, for which the gods show no mercy. Drawing upon personal experiences, the most compelling evidence lies in the Red Wedding, a shared outrage among gods and men. Correspondence between Tywin Lannister and Old Walder is presented here. Such a breach of sacred law is intolerable. The sixth sin, the humiliation of his father, a disgraceful lack of honor. Even digging up Tywin's past misdeeds to illustrate his cold nature, it is well known how Tywin disdains and manipulates his father, Lord Tydos. If he treats family in such a manner, how can he be trusted with the likes of you? This proclamation elaborates on 10 grave sins, each piercing the heart, each word bleeding truth. Ultimately, in the name of Robb Stark, king in the north and the Trident, as well as all those suffering under Lannister tyranny, a call is made for the Seven Kingdoms to unite against this injustice. The signatories of this proclamation are diverse, including the aggrieved lords of the Westerlands, a conscience-stricken Lannister servant, a just scholar, and a fearful monk. Authenticity is difficult to discern, yet the momentum is overwhelming. Public opinion is an invisible blade. Robb explained to Blackfish and Edmure, his eyes sparkling with insight. While it may not pierce the armor of knights, it can shatter the resolve of their soldiers, erode the loyalty of the populace, and confuse the thoughts of their scholars and clergy. Let potential allies harbor doubt and hesitation, fearing to stand under the lion's banner. That shall be our victory. Moreover, he disseminated the dubious pasts of Peter Baelish, Varys, and others, whether substantiated or not. The murkier the waters, the easier it is for hidden serpents to reveal their flaws. The second wave consists of more targeted missives, like poisoned arrows, aimed at the weakest points of the Taiwan alliance. To the Tyrell family of Highgarden. The tone of the letter is rife with temptation and discord. The Rose of the South, unrivaled among the Seven Kingdoms, commanding 100,000 valiant soldiers. Why would it submit to the Lion of the West, especially in service of the illegitimate child born of incest, Joffrey Baratheon? Is the bloodline of House Tyrell not noble? Should you aspire to seize the Iron Throne, I, Robb Stark, king in the North and of the Trident, am willing to offer my unwavering support. All I ask is the assurance of autonomy and safety for the North and the Riverlands. In due time, I would gladly marry Lady Margaery Tyrell to solidify our alliance. Feigning courtesy, planting seeds of suspicion first. To Prince Oberyn Martell and Princess Arianne of Sunspear. This letter is steeped in provocation and mockery, piercing the most sensitive wound of the Dornish. Can the Dornish spears still engage in battle? The blood of Princess Elia remains fresh, while the Lannisters wear their smiles. Do you intend to kneel before them in King's Landing, to reap the spoils? No wonder the world scorns you, deeming Dorne without courage. This letter is sufficient to incite the fiery temper of Prince Oberyn. To Lord Yohn Royce of Runestone. This missive strikes at the heart of the Eyrie. Attempting to unsettle the Vale, Lord Yohn of Bronze, the alliance of eagle, wolf, fish, and stag still echoes in your ears. Now, the Vale lies in disgrace. Usurped by knaves, Peter Baelish conspires with the Lannisters to orchestrate the murder of Duke Jon Arryn. He now seeks to manipulate and control Lady Lysa, throwing the Vale into chaos. I implore you to rise as the true protector of the Vale, to rally the loyal forces, purge the treacherous, and restore the glory of the Vale. A blazing fire, cast directly into the vortex of power in the Vale. The third wave serves as a precise surgical strike against the internal threats of the North. To Lord Wyman Manderley of White Harbor. The commands in this letter are clear. Dispatch troops northward at once, to unite with loyal factions and eradicate the traitorous Ramsay Snow. The vengeance for Winterfell must be washed away with the blood of the Boltons. Simultaneously, the confidential letter carries irrefutable evidence of Ramsay's murder of Domeric Bolton, to be swiftly delivered to Domeric's maternal grandfather, Lord Roderick Castle, and to the Lady Barbary Dustin, who, despite her grievances against House Stark due to her husband's fate, may yet be swayed by interests and the recognition of the Stark family. The letter not only exposes the cruelty of Littlefinger, but also insinuates, Lady Dustin, the Boltons have become traitors in a den of mad dogs. The Stark family remembers friendship and repays loyalty. Should you assist me in quelling the North, you shall attain a status and honor in the new northern landscape far beyond your imagination. Divide, entice, and dismantle any support the Boltons might gain. Amidst all these proclamations, confidential letters and directives to his commanders, Robb deliberately reinforces one message. The great army shall march northward soon, to secure the North before embarking on a southern campaign. He aims to lead Tywin to believe that his strategic focus remains on reclaiming his homeland, potentially easing the pressure on the Riverlands, and even inviting misjudgment. A solitary raven flaps its wings, bearing the swords forged from the essence of words, soaring across the realms of the Seven Kingdoms. These weapons are sharper than the longest blade and more formidable than the strongest fortress, for they strike at the very heart of man. Tywin, do you revel in your machinations within the Red Keep of King's Landing? Then let the clarion call for your downfall resound throughout all of Westeros, allowing you to savor the bitterness of betrayal and the scorn of the masses. This war transcends the mere battlefield. Chapter 13, Forging the Blade. This castle, stained with the blood of treachery and vengeance, has finally come alive under the resolute will of its new master. The air is no longer thick with the stench of blood. Instead, it is filled with the clang of steel, the twang of bowstrings, and the synchronized shouts of thousands engaged in training. Robb understands that a formidable army requires not only strict discipline and generous rewards, but also specialized and systematic training, refining each soldier into a truly lethal weapon. He dismantled the traditional training methods of Westeros and instituted an unprecedented position, the Director of Arms. On this day, from the platform of the training grounds, Robb publicly announced the appointments. Donal Knock. Robb's voice resonated with gravity. Step forward. Donal, still nursing his wounds, advanced with a keen gaze. I appoint you as the Director of Pikemen. I want your lances to be as dense and unyielding as the forests of the North. Your polearms must be as lethal as the fangs of the dire wolf. Can you accomplish this? Rest assured, Your Majesty, Donald declared, striking his chest with fervor. His eyes ablaze with the fire of trust. He understood that this directorship meant he would be the principal instructor and overseer of all pikemen in the realm. A role steeped in both glory and responsibility. Great John Umber. Robb's gaze shifted to the formidable leader, as robust as a bear. Ha! I am here, Great John bellowed. Brimming with anticipation. I appoint you as the director of the leapfroggers. With ground fighting techniques, flying axes, and heavy armor-piercing strikes. I want your leapfroggers to become the most unpredictable stings and hammers within the enemy's formation. Can you train them to be a pack of howling mad wolves? Just watch. Your Majesty, Great John replied, his face flushed with excitement, brandishing his enormous fists. I shall mold them into warriors fiercer than the flayers and wilder than the free folk, targeting the very vulnerabilities of our foes. Sir Brendan Tully. Robb turned his attention to the composed Blackfish. As you command, Your Majesty, Blackfish nodded slightly, his demeanor steady. I appoint you as the director of archers. The arrows I require must possess keen precision, able to pierce the throats of enemy officers from 100 paces and suppress the enemy's ability to raise their heads. The Riverlands are home to the finest archers. This task is yours alone. As you wish, Blackfish replied succinctly, yet a glimmer of brilliance sparkled in his eyes. Overseeing the archers will substantially enhance the efficiency and threat of their ranged firepower. Finally, Robb took a deep breath, his voice resonating throughout the assembly. I shall personally oversee the cavalry, looking upon the now restive cavalry below. We shall be the sharp blades that pierce the heart of the enemy, the decisive force that determines the fate of the battlefield. Follow me, and I shall transform you into the harbingers of dread that will cause the 7 kingdoms to tremble. Long live the King of the North. The enthusiastic cheers erupted from the audience, particularly from the cavalry ranks, akin to the roaring of a tempest. It is a tremendous honor and inspiration for the king to personally oversee them. Appointments have been finalized and strategic plans have been set in motion. Edmure Tully has returned to Riverrun with the commanders of the Riverlands, including the likes of Blackwood, to bolster the defenses of this ancestral stronghold of House Tully. Robb has officially appointed his mother, Caitlin, as the Lady of Riverrun and Blackfish as the commander of the city's defense forces. Riverrun and Riverrun stand as 2 steadfast pillars, firmly embedded in the Riverlands, crucial for the kingdom's endurance. In the span of 20 days, Robb has accomplished far more than this. He recognizes the paramount importance of personal valor and the quality of lower-ranking officers. He has secretly convened a select group comprising Arya, Donal Noy, Daisy Mormont, Orin Oakenshield, young John Umber, and Robin Flint. Along with approximately 30 loyal and exceptionally promising individuals he has promoted from soldiers and common folk, such as Torin, Canna, and Cadewood. Within a secluded stone house deep in the training grounds, Robb's expression was grave. The old and new gods grant me strength and knowledge, he intoned in a deep voice, imbued with undeniable authority. Today, I shall impart to you the 9 heavens refining fist. This is a sacred technique, an ancient creation born from the visions of extraordinary beings observing the evolution of the world, far beyond mere martial skills. His gaze swept over the assembly. Arya's youthful face radiated excitement and focus, while Donal and the others held their breath in concentration, sensing the significance of what the king was about to teach. This technique centers on honing one's vital energy, nourishing the essence, solidifying the foundation, and subtly harnessing the energies of heaven and earth to refine oneself. Robb began to move slowly, his actions imbued with an ancient grace. Although seemingly simple, each subtle transition contained an ineffable rhythm, as if synchronized with breath, heartbeat, and the pulse of the cosmos. Through prolonged practice, one could gradually improve their physical constitution, strengthen their foundation, significantly enhance their latent potential, self-healing capabilities, and resilience, while also initiating the fortification of mental perception. This serves as a perfect foundation for the pursuit of more profound martial arts in the future. However, when the others attempted to replicate the movements, they immediately encountered difficulties. Though the technique appeared slow, it demanded exceptional coordination of various body parts, precise methods of exertion, and even the rhythm of breath, particularly involving some esoteric concepts known as meridians. Robb offered a brief explanation using the world's understanding of energy pathways. Without Robb's subtle guidance, infused with his own inner strength, and pointing out the crucial acupoints, their efforts would devolve into an ineffectual exercise reminiscent of an elderly person stretching. Devoid of any potency, Arya, possessing the greatest aptitude, learned the fastest, beads of sweat soon adorning her brow, yet her eyes shone with determination. In contrast, Donal and the others gritted their teeth, feeling as if they had fought a fierce battle. Yet the subtle warmth coursing through them made them acutely aware of the extraordinary nature of this technique. This is the seed that Robb has sown, the foundation for the future officers and core fighting force. Chapter 14. Assault on Harrenhal, System Reward. Troops on the 20th day, at dawn. The gates of Riverrun swung wide open, and an atmosphere of grim determination dissipated the morning mist. Leading the charge was Robb, clad in dark plate armor, his dire wolf cloak billowing majestically behind him, with gray wind closely at his side. Behind him marched an elite cavalry contingent and 150 Ironborn guards, totaling over 1,700 riders. Each warrior was equipped with 3 steeds to ensure remarkable mobility for their long-distance assault. Among them were the youthful and valiant Owen Norrie, Jon Snow, and Patrick Mallister, their eyes ablaze with fervor. Further back were 2 infantry battalions led by Great John and Dondarrion, poised to follow closely, ready to support and consolidate their triumph. Robb had dispatched Robin Flint on a mission via the sea route to White Harbor. Their target, Harrenhal. Robb reined in his horse, addressing the Iron Riders who would accompany him into battle, his voice sharp as a drawn sword, resonating clearly in every knight's ear. Warriors. To the south, Tywin's tens of thousands march north. The Riverlands are defenseless. Our homeland, our kin, are about to be exposed to the iron hooves of the Lannisters. We cannot remain passive. We cannot allow the Riverlands to be scorched once more. The north, the Riverlands. All our people depend on us. With a sudden flourish, he drew his sword, pointing southward, his tone rising with fearless authority and fervor. Only Harrenhal, the mightiest and most impregnable fortress of the 7 kingdoms. It can serve as a colossal shield against our foes. It can be the fulcrum of our counterattack. Follow me, not to cower in defense, but to strike, to protect all that must be protected. We shall confront those tens of thousands to the south. We shall charge at those well-equipped cowards, staining the walls of Harrenhal with their blood. Tell me, are you afraid? No. The thunderous roar of over 1,700 riders erupted, igniting their battle spirit. To protect their homeland, to follow their godlike king, they surged forward against an overwhelmingly superior foe. The amalgamation of responsibility, reverence, and violent impulse coursed through every soldier's veins, igniting their fervor. Long live the North. Long live the Riverlands. Long live King Robb. At the zenith of this tempestuous fervor, a cold and abrupt notification echoed within Robb's mind. Ding. Host detected successful reversal of fate, integrating power, and actively challenging a formidable enemy, aligning with the path of the Conqueror's legacy. Reward being distributed. Reward. Mastery of troop dynamics. Fragment. The system's chilling prompt reverberated sharply, leaving Robb no time to react. A surge of battlefield will, far purer and more ferocious than when he had first embraced the power of the Conqueror, poured into his consciousness like a torrent from the heavens, crashing into the depths of his being. Boom! The sea of thought was instantly upheaved. No longer was it the agony of physical tearing, but rather innumerable fragments of battle, infused with a chilling malevolence, forcefully branded into his very soul. Outside the city of Julu, Xiangyu, a lone rider, navigated the battlefield with an uncanny ability to pivot and carve a path through the impossible, mastering the terrifying instinct of dominion over the forces at play. Encircled at Gaixia, the celestial dragon's spear traced a bizarre arc, shattering 3 strikes with a single thrust, anticipating the enemy's moves while employing the essence of leveraging strength against strength. In the Battle of Pengcheng, the cavalry, under the command of their leader, transformed cohesion into fragmentation, spreading their triumph like a virus, embodying the very essence of warfare. The dynamics of battle, commanding the ever-shifting tides of the battlefield, mastering the art of transition between offense and defense, rallying troops as if they were mere extensions of his own body. In a sudden jolt, Robb, atop his steed, was violently shaken, nearly tumbling to the ground. He emitted a suppressed groan of agony. The veins on his forehead throbbed like writhing worms, cold sweat instantly soaking through his undergarments. His temples felt as if pierced repeatedly by red-hot needles. Countless instincts of combat were forcibly branded into his psyche. His mind raced, overwhelmed by the cacophony of a battlefield in turmoil. Every muscle and joint ached as though subjected to an invisible force, relentlessly forging him to adapt to a new rhythm of war. This pain was a crucible of both spirit and flesh. Your Grace, young John at his side, was filled with dread, wanting to step forward. I am fine. Robb abruptly raised a hand to halt them, teeth clenched, his eyes bloodshot with intense suffering, his body trembling like a taut bowstring. Yet, the voice that escaped his lips carried an exhilarating fervor, forcefully restrained, yet palpable. digest something. He closed his eyes, striving to endure and assimilate this sudden, terrifying fragment of legacy that could alter the entire course of the impending battle. The entire army fell silent, anxiously yet reverently observing the young figure on horseback, trembling yet resolutely steady. Moments later, Robb's eyes flew open. He tightened the reins with deliberate slowness, straightened his posture, and cast his gaze ahead. Each cavalryman he met with his eyes felt a chill surge up their spines, as if being scrutinized by a primeval beast, yet inexplicably enveloped in a profound sense of safety and fervent confidence. Onward! Robb's voice, raspy yet imbued with unyielding determination, pierced through the air with a resolute clarity. The target, Herrenberg. The thunder of hooves shattered the morning frost, akin to a lethal arrow released towards the south. Chapter 15. Iron flow rushes forth, thunder at the crossing. The journey from the Twin Rivers city to Herrenberg, spanning 380 miles, was ruthlessly compressed under the hooves of the king in the north. For 3 days and nights, this legion of men and steeds, akin to a torrent from the depths of hell, surged past over 360 miles. This was a brutal test of willpower and physical endurance. The provisions dwindled at a visible pace, and the water skins quickly ran dry. The knights, parched, could only sip sparingly from their meager supply of water. Famished, they gnawed on tough jerky and coarse bread, accompanied only by the icy river water. The warhorses exhaled thick, white froth from their nostrils, their chests heaving violently like bellows, as steeds succumbed to exhaustion and fell with mournful whinnies. The riders silently switched to their reserve mounts, resolutely pursuing the ever-advancing banner of the icy wolves. No complaints were uttered, conversation was scarce. Each person's gaze was fixated solely on that young king, whose unwavering silhouette loomed like a mountain. The innate resilience of the Northmen was thoroughly awakened by Robb, who employed generous policies, strict discipline, and rudimentary techniques for regulating breath and conserving energy. They trusted him as one trusts the promise of spring following the harshness of winter. Gray wind, akin to a shadowy lightning bolt, prowled far ahead of the army, his senses far surpassing those of humans, clearing the path for this swift arrow of a force. On the 4th day, during the darkest hour before dawn, the company finally reached the first critical juncture of their journey, the northern bank of Ruby Crossing. Both men and horses had reached the brink of exhaustion, many soldiers barely clinging to their mounts out of instinct. Yet, upon catching sight of the flickering outline of campfires across the river, their eyes rekindled with a sharp glimmer of hope. However, the anticipated struggle for the crossing did not unfold. As the vanguard cautiously approached, they were met with familiar northern attire and wary yet non-hostile gazes. Who goes there? A hoarse but recognizable northern accent called out. It is the king in the north. Robb Stark. Roland urged his horse forward, responding in a low tone. After a brief silence, the opposing camp erupted in a wave of incredulous, stifled cheers and commotion. Torches were quickly ignited, illuminating faces filled with excitement and weariness. These were the over 600 soldiers who had been left behind by Roose Bolton under various pretexts, effectively abandoned. They hailed from House Karstark, House Stark, the resilient spearmen of the streamlands, the mountains, and the White Knife, as well as the elite archers of House Hornwood, alongside many loyal free knights and mercenaries. They had heard of the astonishing turnaround at Riveron, but were trapped here, unable to join the fray. Now, witnessing their king descend like a deity, how could they not be elated? Your Majesty, it truly is your Majesty. We were deceived by that skin-peeling bastard Bolton. We beseech your grace to take us in. We are willing to fight for you. Without need for further words, these 600 elite warriors, long oppressed and filled with hatred for Bolton and the Lannisters, nearly wept as they fell to their knees, instantly integrating into Robb's army. The forces swelled and morale soared. Excellent. Good men of the north. Rise. Cross the river with me. Robb's voice, tinged with fatigue, resonated with an invigorating power. His gaze swept over these gaunt but fervent soldiers, and his plans crystallized further in his mind. A fortuitous opportunity. At dawn, the river's water level had lowered, and the current had slackened. All troops, heed my command. Lightly equipped, we shall swim across. Without hesitation, Robb decisively ordered. At a single command, the cavalry swiftly shed their heavy armor, leading their steeds as they plunged into the frigid river like dumplings into boiling water. The newly joined infantry followed suit without hesitation. The gray wind was the first to swim across to the opposite bank, vigilantly surveying the surroundings. The entire crossing unfolded rapidly and with precision. The icy waters invigorated their weary nerves, revitalizing everyone. Having traversed the Ruby shore, they arrived at the tranquil town of Count Harold. The settlement was eerily quiet. with the sentinels atop the watchtower dozing off, spears cradled in their arms. They could never have anticipated that the young wolf lord, thought to be hundreds of miles away or already advancing north, would descend upon them like a phantom. Kill. There were no war drums, no horns, only Robb's cold, low command. Like a silent pack of wolves, the northern cavalry swiftly mounted their horses, brandishing gleaming swords and axes as they surged into the unsuspecting town like a tidal wave unleashed. The massacre erupted in the still dawn. Many Lannister guards, still ensconced in slumber, were slain in their beds by the invading northern warriors. Scattered resistance was like mere ripples, instantly crushed by the torrent of steel. The battle concluded in less than a quarter of an hour, with the streets of the town strewn with the bodies of Lannister soldiers clad in red robes. The interrogation of captives commenced swiftly, yielding both good and bad news. The good news was that, just as Robb had surmised, the enemy had never anticipated his audacity to come, let alone arrive so swiftly. Everyone assumed that Robb's strategic focus would be to solidify the north first, believing it impossible for him to confront tens of thousands of elite soldiers in the south. This blind spot in their reasoning granted Robb a precious opportunity for a lightning strike. The bad news was that Harrenhal was not devoid of forces. At that moment, stationed there were 30,000 troops led by Kevan Lannister, the steadfast brother of Tywin, and Brynden Tully, one of the realm's most exceptional commanders. Moreover, they comprised the finest soldiers from the Westerlands and the Riverlands. Upon hearing this news, the commanders, who had just experienced an effortless victory, were cloaked in a shadow of dread. 30,000 elite soldiers against their mere 2,000 weary troops? Robb's voice shattered the brief silence. A cold, arrogant smirk graced his lips, and his eyes ignited with a fierce ambition that looked down upon the world. I shall fight the elite. He rose abruptly, casting his gaze over all his commanders and soldiers. All forces, heed my command. Rest in place. Eat and drink well. Get a good night's sleep. He paused, his voice rising sharply, cleaving through the air like a war spear. After lunch, we shall depart. As the elite within Harrenhal prepared their evening meal, a glimmer of cruel humor flickered in Robb's eyes. We shall pay them a visit, and let us seize their dinner for ourselves. After a brief moment of astonishment, an overwhelming surge of battle fervor and laughter erupted. We shall steal their dinner. Long live the king. The weariness that had once weighed heavily dissipated, and the fear of facing 30,000 elite soldiers transformed into boundless courage and fervor in the wake of Robb's unwavering confidence, even tinged with a hint of brazen arrogance. Under the reign of such a king, what adversary is there left to fear? Chapter 16. The invasion ignites. The decapitation of Landau. At 11 o'clock in the morning, within the temporary command post of Earl Haraway's town, Robb awakened from a profound state of meditation, his eyes opening without a hint of drowsiness. As if he had never endured the fatigue of relentless days of marching, he rose with remarkable grace. Outside the tent stood a young yet exceptionally composed figure awaiting him. Cadwood, the son of the scribe from the small village of Riverlands, had lost his entire family to the hands of the bandits in the Western Territories. At this moment, his face bore no trace of sorrow, only an almost cold focus and calmness. He was a promising talent whom Robb had been nurturing towards a strategic role, not only due to his personal vendetta but also because of his rare literacy, meticulous thought process, and a mind capable of maintaining clarity even under the weight of profound grief. While most soldiers seized the final moments to rest, he had already led a few of the most astute scouts to conduct a final reconnaissance and meticulous mapping of the terrain surrounding Harrenburg and the latest enemy deployments. Your Majesty, Cadwood stepped forward as Robb emerged, his tone steady and devoid of tremor. As you predicted, Harrenburg is vast, yet severely dilapidated. Numerous walls have collapsed and remain unrepaired. Moreover, it has suffered the ravages of mercenaries such as the Blood Theater Troop. The majority of the enemy forces are stationed in the western camp of the city. More importantly, the enemy appears to be in a state of readiness, poised to advance northward, with supplies accumulating and troop movements frequent, resulting in a chaotic configuration that is neither entirely defensive nor offensive. He presented a meticulously annotated map, with clear lines and distinct symbols. As you rightly pointed out, the army is at its most vulnerable when it is gathered and prepared to launch an attack, yet has not yet moved. At this moment, their hearts are restless, and their formations are unsteady. This presents a divinely bestowed opportunity for battle. Based on this intelligence, I have drafted a preliminary offensive plan. Our forces, consisting of 1,800 cavalry, will be divided into 3 units to approach from the southwestern slope. This direction leads to the enemy's home territory, yet it is not a main thoroughfare, where their vigilance is at its lowest. The primary objective is to create maximum chaos, driving the fleeing soldiers to assault the core of their encampment, inciting disorder in their ranks. The ultimate goal is to corner the panicked enemy forces against the walls of Herrenberg, utilizing the castle itself to fragment their strength, making it difficult for them to guard both flanks, thereby facilitating our encirclement and annihilation. Robb quickly scanned the map. The details of the plan resonated harmoniously with his battlefield intuition rooted in the legacy of the conqueror, reflecting the principles of stealthy engagement, precise strikes at weak points, and rapid expansion of victory. Cadwood, well done. Robb's voice carried a note of appreciation, a rare commendation. However, his finger did not rest on the relatively weak flank as initially planned. Instead, it abruptly pressed down, precisely marking a core area emblazoned with the emblem of the Swift Hunters. Here, I shall personally lead the main force of 600 cavalry along this primary assault axis, redirecting it here to directly penetrate the headquarters of Landau. Upon hearing this, even Cadwood, with his usual composure, felt his pupils slightly constrict as he instinctively confirmed. The forces of Landau? Your Majesty, the intelligence has been thoroughly verified. His troops are the most elite division of the Southern Army, arranged with the utmost discipline and guarded with unparalleled vigilance. Should we adhere to the original plan, first striking the flanks of the Fosowai family or the more peripheral mercenary encampments, to instigate broader panic and chaos? Robb interrupted him, his tone calm, yet imbued with an unwavering decisiveness, as if stating an established fact. Strength and weakness cannot merely be judged by appearances. Landau Tally, long esteemed as the foremost general of the South, even lauded by some as the greatest commander of the Seven Kingdoms, embodies a pillar of morale for the 30,000 united forces. He symbolizes an indomitable confidence. He raised his gaze, his eyes piercing toward Herrenberg, a cold and arrogant smile curling at the corners of his mouth. To vanquish 10 disparate forces is less effective than to obliterate him entirely. To sever the head of the strongest adversary and capture their standard, his demise would serve as the hammer that shatters the will of the Southern Coalition. In my estimation, the head of Landau Tally is already within my grasp. This audacious proclamation, laced with absolute confidence, instantly dispelled the last remnants of doubt within Card's heart, igniting a fervor fueled by the essence of kingship. He struck his chest emphatically. Yes, Your Majesty. I shall immediately adjust our deployment to ensure the main assault passage remains unimpeded. At precisely noon, outside the town of Haraway, 1,800 Northern cavalry stood in formation, their mounts silent, with only the battle banners fluttering in the wind. After a brief respite and meal, though their faces bore the marks of hardship, each pair of eyes burned with the flames of vengeance and unwavering trust in the figure ahead. Robb rode at the forefront, his dark armor gleaming in the autumn sunlight, his cloak billowing behind him, while Grey Wind quietly crouched beside his steed, the Emerald Wolf's eyes surveying the entire army, an invisible pressure enveloping the surroundings. He swept his gaze across the ranks, his voice resonating like thunder, clearly reaching the ears of every knight. Owen Norrie, step forward. The young knight spurred his horse into the open. You shall command 500 infantry, remaining to guard Haraway. Remember, this place is the junction of the Riverway and the King S Road, and the Ruby Sand Crossing controls the vital waterways. I want you to mobilize all available resources immediately, utilizing the confiscated equipment from the west, timber, to construct a double-layered wooden and stone barrier around the high ground outside the town. Set up crossbow positions on the inner side. Comfort the populace and recruit the able-bodied. I want Haraway to transform into a steel nail that can choke the throat of the Seven Kingdoms when necessary. Can you accomplish this? Rest assured, Your Majesty. As long as I am here, the town shall endure. Owen Norrie exclaimed, his face flushed with excitement, pounding his chest in acceptance of the command. Chapter 17. The invasion rages. The head of Landau is severed, too. Robb nodded, then turned his gaze to the main force preparing to march. The rest of you, follow me. Our objective is Herrenberg. We shall carry only weapons, armor, and a single meal. Cast aside all burdens. Grey Wind, lead the way. With a commanding gesture, the colossal ice wolf darted forth like a gray lightning bolt, swiftly vanishing into the thicket ahead. Leading the charge was Robb, with dozens of his most elite guards trailing closely behind, moving forward like phantoms. Their mission was to carve a path of safety, shroud the army's movements, and eliminate any potential enemy scouts along the way, effectively sealing off any information. The army began its advance. Rather than galloping wildly, the procession moved at a deliberate pace akin to walking, approximately 100 paces per minute, maintaining a speed of around 4 miles per hour. This was the result of Robb's profound understanding of cavalry mobility. Such a pace ensured utmost stealth during the march, preventing premature exposure, while keeping both horses and riders in a state of readiness, akin to prolonged warm-ups, allowing for an explosive surge of power when engaging the enemy. The entire contingent resembled a silent current of steel, stealthily approaching the massive encampment of the Herrenberg coalition, shielded by the woods and hills. A mysterious bond existed between Robb and Grey Wind, through the wolf's keen senses. The positions of distant enemy patrols and the intervals between their shifts unfolded in Robb's mind as clearly as a map. This initial application of the Stark family's innate abilities allowed him to deftly direct his forces to either evade or eliminate the scouts. 5 hours later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the evening sky blazed with crimson hues. The entire army had quietly reached the designated point for their attack, nestled behind a densely vegetated slope to the southwest of Herrenberg. Both horse and rider were at the peak of their physical and mental readiness, their spirits brimming with combat fervor, akin to a taut bowstring, poised for a cataclysmic release. The soldiers lay low upon their steeds, holding their breath, gazing toward the slope below. The sight before them was enough to take the breath away from even the most seasoned veteran. The coalition's vast encampment sprawled across the twilight landscape like an ancient behemoth, extending over 20 miles. Flickering lights began to dot the encampment, creating a breathtaking spectacle. Towering siege engines, menacing catapults, and massive siege towers loomed like silent steel monsters among the tents, while the grand pavilions of lords and knights resembled a riot of colorful mushrooms scattered across the field. The air was tinged with the distant sounds of commotion, voices mingling with the clatter of metal, the whinnying of war horses, interspersed with the sense of smoke and livestock. The banners of the southern realm dominated the scene. The golden rose banner of House Tyrell fluttered in the wind, flanked by the green and red apple banners of House Fossaway, the oak leaf banner of House Oakhart, the goose banner of House Tully, and the black and orange butterfly banner of House Mullen. At the center of these vibrant banners was the striking red hunter's banner of House Tully, its colors of blue and green standing out prominently, its designated area notably more organized than the others. "Your Majesty, that is the camp of House Tully," Cadwood whispered, pointing towards the prominent banner. Robb nodded slightly, as the light pierced through the space, locking onto the largest command tent at the heart of that encampment. A profound instinct, shrouded in mystery, whispered to him that the target lay ahead. He slowly raised his right hand. Behind him, 1,800 riders simultaneously lowered their bodies slightly, gripping their weapons tightly, their muscles taut, like a pack of wolves poised to pounce. A low, oppressive growl emanated from the throat of Grey Wind, its fangs glinting with a chilling light in the twilight. Time seemed to stand still. In the next moment, Robb's raised hand came crashing down. The north. A roar erupted, tearing through the silence of dusk like thunder. Crushed them underfoot. Kill. The deafening battle cry shattered the evening calm, as 3 formations of arrows, long prepared for this moment, surged forth like 3 blades, red-hot from the furnace and eager for blood, piercing into the vast and unwieldy camp of the Allied forces at their chosen weak point. 2 flanking units, each comprising over 600 riders, crashed into the mercenary encampment in the area where the servants and auxiliary soldiers congregated. It was the time of evening repast. Wisps of smoke curled from the camp, pots of thick soup just beginning to boil, and bread not yet fully baked. Soldiers had shed their heavy armor, gathering in small groups around the fires, laughing and joking, while mercenaries clamored for food and drink, and servants busied themselves distributing provisions. This was the most relaxed, chaotic, and utterly unguarded moment of the day. The terrifying clash of hooves instantly replaced the clamor. The iron cavalry of the north surged forth like a torrent of steel, mercilessly trampling into the throng. Heavy hooves smashed the campfires, overturned cauldrons, and sent any living thing in their path flying and crushed. The sounds of screams, gasps, curses, and the horrific noise of weapons tearing through flesh erupted suddenly, creating a cacophony akin to a hellish symphony. Enemy attack. It's the savages of the north. Run. My arm. Don't push. Damn it, you stepped on me. Explosive chaos erupted in these areas. Thousands of panicked mercenaries, disheveled soldiers, and unarmed servants, like a disturbed hive of hornets or a frightened flock of sheep, could not discern the number of foes closing in, scrambling like headless chickens purely driven by survival instinct. Their terror spread like a plague, soon to be driven by the merciless Northmen, who herded them like sheepdogs, transforming into an unstoppable, desperate tide of humanity. Surging deeper into the camp, towards the central command tent, they trampled over any attempts at organized resistance, scattering their own formations into disarray. Meanwhile, Grey Wind, The formidable dire wolf of the tundra became an invisible fourth force of chaos. It darted silently towards the direction of the allied stables like a bolt of gray lightning. The primal ferocity emanating from the Wolf King was an ingrained source of terror for the warhorses. In an instant, the stables erupted. Thousands of warhorses neighed in panic, rearing up, colliding, kicking, biting, and desperately trying to break free of their restraints, galloping wildly in a frenzy. They overturned tents, trampled the crowd, and the chaos and uproar they created surpassed even that of 10,000 elite cavalry. On the western side of the entire coalition camp, chaos descended into a state of frenzied pandemonium. Chapter 18. The Invasion Rages. The execution of Lord Lando, leading a formidable cavalry of 600 elite Iron Riders. Robb Stark's most potent and illustrious force headed with unwavering precision toward the well-organized and vividly bannered encampment of Count Lando Tully. Truly deserving of the title Star of the South, even within the relatively secure rear of the military camp. The Tully family's encampment maintained an impressive state of vigilance and an autonomous defensive system. Surrounding it were rudimentary yet effective chevaux de frise and tripwires, with sentinels standing guard and patrols incessantly traversing, exhibiting a level of alertness far surpassing that of soldiers in other regions. Fire! Robb commanded with an icy gaze, showing no signs of hesitation. In an instant, the elite archers behind him drew their bows. A deadly rain of arrows surged through the twilight, akin to the summons of the Grim Reaper. The outer sentries and a patrol squad barely discerned the source of the assault before they fell. Shrieking like wheat before the scythe. Break through, Robb urged, leading the charge, the primal force within him surging forth. His specially crafted, super-heavy lance transformed into a roaring black dragon, thrusting forcefully into the base of a chevaux de frise. With a heave, the massive barrier was lifted entirely by his superhuman strength, hurtling through the air like a boulder launched from a catapult, crashing into the frenzied ranks of the Tully soldiers rushing towards the warning, instantly causing a cacophony of broken bones and anguished cries. Clear a path, young John Umber bellowed, mimicking his leader. As he wielded his warhammer to strike at the connection of the chevaux de frise, other elite soldiers followed suit, employing spears and axes to swiftly carve out a deadly corridor wide enough for cavalry to charge through. Where the iron hooves tread, nothing shall survive, Robb roared, spurring his steed forward, leading the charge into the Tully encampment. The iron tides surged into the Tully camp, the Northmen's cavalry akin to tigers among sheep, cleaving through all in their path, trampling tents with unyielding force, their advance relentless and devastating. The chilling blades effortlessly tore through armor, while the iron hooves of their steeds reduced any attempting to form ranks into mere pulp. In an instant, the forefront of the Tully encampment transformed into a bloody slaughterhouse. However, the response from Lando Tully was astonishingly swift. Amidst the brief turmoil, this seasoned general, through his immense prestige and strict discipline, managed to rally a tightly knit phalanx of approximately 500 men. Their pikes stood tall like a dense forest, glimmering ominously, aimed directly at the oncoming foe. Flanking the formation were archers hastily lining up, loosing sporadic arrows into the fray. He himself, along with his younger son, Deacon Tully, donned their armor and, leading around 300 of the Tully family's most elite cavalry, positioned themselves behind the phalanx, striving to stabilize their formation and counter the incursion of the Northmen. The sporadic arrows flew, clanging against the plate and chain armor of the northern cavalry, while some unfortunate steeds fell with mournful cries. Their riders struck in the face or joints, resulting in casualties and delay. With a disdainful snort, Robb Stark, mounted upon his steed, not only refused to slow down, but instead urged his horse into a breathtaking surge of speed. An invisible yet ferocious aura emanated from him, as if one man alone could embody an entire army's fervor in a desperate charge. He would trample through their ranks and shatter their formation. As the sharpest arrowhead, he was closely followed by a dozen or so elite guards, each tempered by the rigorous trials of the 9 heavens body refinement, their strength far exceeding that of ordinary knights. Together, they formed an unstoppable spearhead, boldly advancing towards the formidable phalanx of tightly packed heavy infantry, armed with their formidable pikes. In any military manual of Westeros, or indeed any common sense, a cavalry charge into such a well-ordered and densely packed formation would be tantamount to suicide, especially within the confines of a camp where cavalry could not fully leverage their momentum. Yet in the next moment, the calm and collected expression of Ser Lal Tully froze, transforming into sheer disbelief and horror as he witnessed a spectacle that transcended his entire military understanding. The seemingly impenetrable leather shields and the long, sharp pikes, stretching 4 to 5 meters, appeared as fragile as mere toys before the advancing youth. Robb's heavy lance seemed to come alive. The lance swept through the air like a dragon's tail, shattering the iron-bound wooden shields into fragments. The shaft crashed down like a great serpent, breaking and twisting the thick pike poles with ease. His exquisite thrusts resembled an art form, sending entire shields and their bearers soaring into the air, crashing into the ranks behind and creating chaos. This was not merely a display of overwhelming strength. It was a manifestation of skill and courage at its zenith. Behind him, his loyal guards were equally indomitable, blocking and cleaving, fiercely protecting Robb's flanks and rear, relentlessly widening the gaps in the enemy's ranks. In an instant, this wild charge had torn a massive, bloody chasm through the once formidable pike and shield formation, a nightmare for cavalry, rendered helpless by this small yet ferocious spearhead. Severed limbs, broken shields, and shattered weapons flew through the air. Robb, at the forefront, pierced through the ranks, trampling upon the Tully family's banner of the swift-footed hunter. His lance pointed directly at the newly organized Tully cavalry, aiming for none other than Ser Lal Tully himself. "Father, be careful." Young Deacon Tully, witnessing the figure charging like a demon, was filled with dread but mustered his courage to intercept, spear in hand. "Stand aside," shouted John Umber, following closely beside Robb. Unleashing a thunderous roar, his war spear struck with unparalleled force, deflecting Deacon's precise thrust. The crescent blade of the spear effortlessly sliced through, creating an opening. The tremendous force rendered Deacon unable to control his weapon, leaving him wide open. In a swift motion, John's spear lunged forward, the tip piercing through the armor at Deacon's throat and emerging from the back of his neck. The second son of the Southern Star fell from his horse without uttering a final word. Almost simultaneously, Robb's lance surged forth like a venomous dragon emerging from its lair, emitting a piercing shriek as it aimed directly at Ser Balon Tully. Balon's pupils constricted as he unleashed the entirety of his martial prowess, wielding his ancestral greatsword, the Heartsbane, in a valiant attempt to parry the onslaught. Yet, Robb's lance, with an angle and velocity that defied the very laws of physics, deftly circumvented his feeble defense, piercing through Balon's finely wrought armor as effortlessly as a hot knife slices through butter. A pained grunt escaped Balon's lips, his body propelled from the saddle by the terrifying kinetic energy contained within the lance. With a tremendous exertion of strength, Robb hoisted this renowned champion of the South, famed for his valor, aloft on the point of his weapon, as if showcasing the most splendid of trophies. Chapter 19. The onslaught rages. The Tully head is presented. Balon is slain. Robb's voice thundered like the very heavens, drowning out the clamor of the battlefield, resonating clearly in the ears of every soldier present. With a mighty flick of his lance, he hurled Balon Tully's lifeless form into the stunned ranks of the remaining Tully soldiers, akin to discarding a sack of refuse. The thud of the heavy corpse hitting the ground rang out like a death knell, echoing in the hearts of every soldier from the south. Those who surrender shall be spared. The northern forces seized upon this moment of profound shock, their voices rising in a unified roar that reverberated across the land, akin to a mountain's echo or a tsunami's crash. Clang. It was uncertain who first cast down their weapon, but soon the clattering of arms became incessant. The banner of the huntsman was felled by a northern warrior, ruthlessly trampled in the mud and blood. The loss of their commander, the death of their heir, the fall of their banner. These events transpired in the blink of an eye, too swift for any to react. The thread of resistance that bound the Tully soldiers snapped instantaneously, their collapse spreading like an avalanche. The rapid disintegration of the Tully stronghold dealt a devastating blow to the morale of the entire coalition. The spiritual pillar of the southern forces, a renowned general acknowledged by all 7 kingdoms, was thus dispatched by the northern king as if he were but a mere fowl. Such shock and terror were sufficient to send the spirits of any remaining coalition soldiers into disarray. The entire camp of the coalition descended into a hellish chaos, a maelstrom of disorder and panic. Thousands of terrified soldiers lost all semblance of command, as they were relentlessly compressed and driven by the northern cavalry and the tide of fleeing men, scurrying like headless flies towards the eastern walls of Harrenhal. To the south lay the expansive God's Eye Lake, while to the west and north, the northern cavalry continued their merciless assault. Their only apparent escape route seemed to be the grand fortress of Harrenhal, the largest in all the 7 kingdoms. The throng grew increasingly dense, shoving, trampling, amidst a cacophony of curses, cries, and pleas for mercy. In a desperate bid to be the first to breach the gates, former comrades turned upon one another with drawn blades. The colossal western gate of Harrenhal was effectively blocked by the surge of fleeing souls. rendering the gate guards powerless to close it, as they too were scattered by the tide of retreating soldiers. Under the command of Robb Stark, the Northern Army meticulously encircled the area, akin to seasoned hunters. They relentlessly picked off defiant officers with arrows, wielded long swords, or hammers, and morning stars to reap any enemy attempting to break free, exacerbating the chaos and panic, driving more fleeing soldiers like cattle to the death zone beneath the castle walls. Ultimately, as the command structure collapsed, hopes of escape vanished, and casualties mounted, the morale of the remaining coalition soldiers disintegrated. Led by a few surviving southern nobles, well aware that capture was preferable to being trampled or slain by the ruthless king, organized units began to lay down their arms and kneel in surrender. Meanwhile, Kevin Lannister, recognizing the untenable situation, had decisively abandoned most of his troops and, forsaking armor, led over 1,000 of the finest red-cloaked cavalry from the west in a hasty retreat toward King's Landing. As the sun sank below the horizon, the last vestiges of twilight painted the formidable, ghostly walls of Harrenhal a haunting shade of crimson. The battle gradually subsided, leaving the air thick with a nauseating blend of blood, gunpowder, and the stench of excrement. The fields and the base of the walls were strewn with bodies, piled high, many unrecognizable from trampling. The groans of the wounded echoed through the desolation. Robb stood resolutely in the midst of the battlefield, having unfastened his helmet. His dark armor smeared with congealed and fresh blood. He breathed steadily, as if the extraordinary charge and slaughter had merely served as a warm-up. Patrick Mallister offered him a water skin, his eyes brimming with an indescribable fervor of admiration. Robb accepted it, tilting his head back to drink deeply of the crisp spring water, the cold liquid washing away the metallic taste of blood in the air. His gaze swept across the ravaged battlefield and the dejected, tightly guarded prisoners, a cold and satisfied smirk gracing his lips. Addressing the gathered leaders, each bearing wounds yet exuding an exhilarating excitement, he remarked, "Well done, swift actions indeed. It appears we still have time to relish the sumptuous feast the enemy prepared for us." Upon hearing this, the commanders paused momentarily before erupting into hearty laughter, filled with the pride and joy of victors. Indeed, they had struck with such swiftness that the evening meals originally prepared for the 30,000 troops in the coalition camp were still warm. What could be more gratifying than celebrating victory with the enemy's fine wine and delicacies? Long live the king! Long live the North! Let us feast heartily tonight. Preliminary reports of the battle's outcome arrived swiftly, each figure igniting hearts and stirring blood. In this conflict, the coalition forces suffered over 5,000 casualties, including the beheading of Lord Ronald Tarly and his son, Dickon Tarly. Nearly half perished amidst the chaos, trampled by their own or drowned in the treacherous waters of the Goddess Eye, capturing approximately 20,000 nobles, knights, and soldiers of various ranks. Due to Robb's strict orders prior to the battle, to secure their own safety while striving to capture the southern lords, with the western lords subject to more leniency, the accompanying southern nobles were nearly all ensnared. This included several earls and viscounts attempting to disguise themselves as servants or soldiers to flee, who were captured one by the northern scouts, comprised of nimble soldiers and hunters. Each of these nobles represents a substantial bargaining chip at the negotiation table. The spoils of war are heaped like mountains, making detailed accounting impossible in the short term. This includes, but is not limited to, over 6,000 intact sets of finely crafted heavy cavalry plate armor, more than 8,000 sets of infantry armor, an overwhelming quantity of light and heavy weapons, bows, arrows, and provisions, all piled high and incalculable. Over 16,000 horses, including both war steeds and pack animals, were captured, along with countless tents and camp equipment, as well as a significant cache of gold and silver carried by the allied nobles. The war machine, built by the Lannister family and the Tyrells from mountains of gold and silver, has seen nearly half fall into Robb's hands. Meanwhile, the northern forces suffered a mere 79 fatalities, with over 100 lightly wounded. This is an exchange of staggering proportions, a resounding and glorious victory. Robb Stark, through a textbook-like lightning raid and precise decapitation tactics, delivered a masterclass on the importance of swiftness in warfare and relentless aggression to all of Westeros. This lesson comes with a bloody footnote, known as the Heart's Execution. The elimination of a Renly Tarly, in terms of strategic value and impact on enemy morale, is far more lethal than the demise of 1,000 common soldiers. The news of the Southern Army's soul being severed will send shockwaves through the Riverlands, instilling fear and trepidation. Any future general opposing the North must weigh their own life against that of Renly Tarly when facing the banner of the Ice Wolf. As for the captured southern nobles, they represent tangible future gains. Before Robb possesses the strength to annex the Riverlands, these living nobles, who can be exchanged for substantial ransom and political concessions, hold far greater worth than a cold corpse. This constitutes a wealth that would make even the Iron Bank envious, and will become one of the richest capitals for Robb's future ambitions. As the sun set entirely, night descended. Yet within and around Harrenhal, countless torches and bonfires were lit, illuminating the night like day. The northern soldiers jubilantly cleared the battlefield, detaining prisoners and transporting the spoils. Over the largest bonfires, exquisite provisions originally prepared for the southern lords were being roasted. Whole roasted cattle, pigs, and fragrant stews simmering in large cauldrons, with barrels of fine arbor red wine being opened. Chapter 20. The Dawn of Unification. The victory at Harrenhal is a triumph that far surpasses merely reclaiming a castle. It is a tempest, a dual storm of political and military nature, conjured and expertly navigated by Robb Stark, whose shockwaves are sweeping across Westeros with unprecedented velocity. Robb stands with hands clasped behind him before a grand archway, gazing down upon the bustling yet orderly scene below, reminiscent of an industrious ant colony. Outside the window lies a battlefield rapidly being cleared, where nearly 20,000 captives, segregated and monitored, remain eerily silent under the indomitable presence of the king in the north. A steady stream of soldiers tirelessly transports vast spoils deep into the castle's extensive storerooms. A new order is being forcibly established upon the ruins of this city. Notorious for its curses and despair, the Riverlands are now bereft of heirs. Robb's voice is calm, devoid of excessive emotion, as if merely stating a fact detached from himself. This proclamation reverberates within the tower, causing the corps commanders standing behind him, John Umber, the judge of laws, and the recently appointed young advisor, Caitlin, to stiffen in response. The Lady of the Riverlands' demise during her flight has drawn a bloody yet unmistakable conclusion regarding the ownership of Harrenhal. This castle, the largest in the Seven Kingdoms and strategically vital, alongside the nearby towns of Harrenhal, Saltpans, and the fertile, well-connected heartland along the banks of the Trident, has instantaneously become a land without a master. As for the title of Duke of Harrenhal, acquired through schemes by Peter Baelish, which he never truly controlled, in the eyes of Robb and his warriors, it is nothing but a farcical jest. Now, this land, soaked in the blood of countless heroes and cowards alike, along with the power and wealth it symbolizes, has become Robb Stark's rightful spoils. Send word, Robb commands as he turns. From this day forth, Harrenhal, the town of Harrenhal, Saltpans, and all associated villages, fields, salt pans, and woodlands shall fall directly under the jurisdiction of the North and the King of the Trident, henceforth known as the Harrenhal domain. Robb approaches a makeshift table, upon which a detailed map is unfurled. Here, all military, taxation, justice, and civilian matters shall adhere to the unified laws I establish, managed by officials I appoint. Promotions will be based solely on merit and capability, not lineage. His words resonate with a resolute determination to forge history. A blank slate is the best canvas for our endeavors. Here, we shall create the blueprint for a new order, a centralized, meritocratic system, orchestrating resources with precision. Robb's finger presses firmly upon the location of Harrenhal, as if imprinting his will upon the land itself. Officials will rise through their abilities, armies will grow through valor, artisans will thrive through skill, and the populace will prosper under comprehensive governance. No remnants of feudal toxicity, no shackles of hereditary privilege. All resources and manpower shall be unified under my legal framework, operating with the efficiency of a finely tuned mechanism. This declaration, undoubtedly, is astonishingly radical to the noble John and his peers. However, having endured the betrayal of the Red Wedding and having witnessed firsthand the miraculous strength of Robb, along with his wisdom that led them to astonishing victories, they decided to follow him without hesitation, reassured that the young wolf would not forsake them. Why ponder further? As for the remnants of the old nobility, whose influence still lingered in this land, Robb's core strategy was remarkably straightforward: to drive them away with incentives, pensions, to entice them with titles, honorary positions, and to elevate them through merit, military achievements, or pathways to advancement. His aim was to reclaim the territory and win the hearts of the people. He sought to transform these feudal lords, who possessed land and serfs, into officials of the new regime, officers of the new army, and managers of new enterprises. The lands of the twins, where the Frey family and its vassals had been nearly obliterated, and Harrenhal, which had been left desolate with its minor nobility either dead or fled, served as ideal testing grounds for this transformation. This initiative would be piloted here first, and upon its success, would be expanded across the entire kingdom. Robb's brilliance lay in his willingness to establish a presence in the most perilous areas, embodying both the thunderous wrath and compassionate spirit that would soothe the displaced. Rather than retreating to the safety of Riverrun or the Twins to bask in victory, he resolutely planted his banner at the forefront of chaos in Harrenhal. As the war-ravaged refugees, weary and gaunt, flocked to this massive city seeking sanctuary, they were met not with hostility or plunder, but with the soldiers of the north maintaining order, preparing large cauldrons to distribute food, much of which was delicious broth seized from the enemy forces. Robb himself would occasionally appear among the assembled refugees, his tall figure, calm yet imbued with undeniable strength, and those eyes that seemed to pierce the soul, emanating both frost and fire, possessed a formidable capacity for reassurance and intimidation. He proclaimed openly, "Under my rule, as long as the laws are upheld, every hard-working individual shall attain the dignity and hope of survival. Oppressors of the common folk shall be deemed traitors." This unprecedented direct linkage of royal authority with the welfare of the common people was a novel approach in Westeros. It swiftly garnered the support of the refugees and those commoners in the Riverlands who had previously harbored doubts about northern rule. Their allegiance stemmed not only from the most primal gratitude for salvation, but also from the powerful and reassuring image of a protector that Robb embodied, which far surpassed the sheer terror of Tywin Lannister's reign. The lords of the Riverlands initially supported him for liberating them from the iron grip of the Lannisters. Now, the common folk of the Riverlands rallied behind him because he offered them the most precious commodities in chaotic times: order and the hope of survival. Good news soon followed. The clearing of the dungeons yielded a tremendous surprise. They had rescued Ser Wylis Manderly, the heir of White Harbor, the rotund and jovial knight. Despite possessing only modest martial skills, displayed a fervent excitement upon seeing Robb, even in his haggard state after prolonged imprisonment. Tears welled in his eyes as he struggled to bow deeply, exclaiming, "Your Majesty, I knew it. The Stark family shall never falter. The loyalty of White Harbor is unwavering unto death." The rescue of Ser Wylis holds profound significance. White Harbor stands as the wealthiest domain in the north, and the allegiance of House Manderly is crucial for the stability of the northern rear. The salvation of Ser Wylis not only reinforced this loyalty. Although he lacked prowess in combat, he was an exceptional talent in governance, adept at managing internal affairs, fostering relationships, and navigating diplomatic protocols. Consequently, Robb appointed him as the chief minister of Harrenhal, entrusting him with the monumental tasks of resource allocation, refugee resettlement, and the establishment of a preliminary administrative framework. Grateful and eager, Wylis threw himself into his duties, his diplomatic finesse perfectly complementing the general's robust, yet somewhat coarse approaches. Yet, the surprises did not end there. While clearing the depths of the labyrinthine and foreboding dungeons of Harrenhal, two almost unrecognizable prisoners, forgotten in the shadows, presented an unexpected delight. Chapter 21. A discerning eye for talent, Oliver's return. The figure of Robb Stark emerged in the lower regions of the castle. Rather than remaining in the highest tower to strategize, he habitually ventured into the grassroots. For him, every stone of the castle, every nook, even the musty and bloody depths of the dungeons, needed to be etched clearly in his mind. True mastery stems from an acute awareness of details, and talent often hides in the most unexpected corners. Accompanied by the military officer, Ser Demon Mormont, and several guards, he made his way into the castle's depths. The entrance to the dungeons was dark and damp, the air thick with the mingling scents of disinfectant herbs and lingering decay. The soldiers on duty, upon seeing their king, immediately straightened and saluted with reverence. "Your Majesty, the dungeon has been cleared as per your orders. Here is the list of all detainees." The officer presented a scroll of parchment with both hands. Robb took it, his gaze swiftly scanning the scrawled names and brief annotations. His reading speed was remarkable, as if he were not merely perusing but instinctively filtering. Suddenly, his finger paused on a name: Oliver Blinkton, merchant from Salt Pans. Note: severely injured. Suspected of resisting the Westerland's army, betrayed by the Boltons, family perished. Fragments of intelligence regarding Salt Pans swiftly pieced together in Robb's mind. It was a prosperous town located at the estuary of the Trident, strategically significant, and one of the areas ravaged by the mountain scourge, Gregor Clegane. "Take me to meet this Oliver Blinkton." Robb's voice was calm. The officer dared not delay and promptly led the way. Navigating through several dimly lit corridors, they arrived at a relatively clean, yet still cold cell. Within the confines of an iron cage, a figure huddled in the corner, nestled upon a bed of straw, shrouded in a tattered blanket. One could barely discern from the contours of his form that he was once a man of considerable stature. Upon hearing footsteps, the figure stirred slightly, revealing a pale, puffy face marred by bruises and scars. The eyes, which perhaps once sparkled with shrewd mirth, now appeared as mere lifeless embers. Devoid of warmth, Daisy Mormont furrowed her brow, whispering, "Your Majesty, this man is gravely injured, and his spirit seems—" Robb raised his hand, silencing her. His gaze meticulously scrutinized every inch of Oliver Blinken's disheveled state. He perceived not merely the surface filth and frailty, but something far deeper, the remnants of a well-nourished physique. And within those dulled eyes, a flicker of a fragile light, not yet entirely extinguished. "Open the door," Robb commanded. The iron lock clanged open. He entered alone, crouching down to meet Oliver's gaze. He refrained from speaking immediately, merely observing him in silence. The invisible yet potent aura of kingship seemed to render the air in the desolate cell nearly palpable. Oliver Blinken's vacant stare gradually sharpened. Recognizing the youthful yet legendary visage before him, a tumult of fear, confusion, and an ineffable complexity flickered in his eyes. He struggled to move, only to elicit a painful cough from his wounds. "Oliver Blinken," Robb finally spoke, his voice low yet resonant, penetrating Oliver's consciousness with an extraordinary clarity. "You were a merchant from Saltmarsh. When the Westlands were invaded, you foresaw the impending doom, prepared your vessels, and organized a guard." Ignoring Oliver's astonishment, Robb continued with a calm demeanor, as though recounting a tale detached from himself. "You could have fled, taking your family and riches to become a wealthy man across the narrow sea. Yet, you did not." His words paused, his gaze sharp as a blade, seemingly capable of slicing through Oliver's very soul to unveil its deepest wounds. "Because you witnessed the deaths of your fellow countrymen?" Boom. The blood-soaked memories he had sealed within erupted forth. The anguished cries of his kin, the fallen figures of his comrades, the cold derision of the Bolton soldiers, the despairing glances of his family in their final moments. Most hauntingly, the contrast of little Lisa's once clear, yearning eyes, which ultimately became hollow and void, stabbed at his heart like the sharpest dagger. A guttural whimper escaped Oliver, tears mingling with the grime on his face, his body trembling violently. He was no longer the cunning merchant, but a wretched soul wholly consumed by hatred, guilt, and despair. Robb continued to gaze at him with unwavering calm, revealing neither pity nor revulsion, only a profound understanding. "The people of the mountain touched your limits. Thus, you retaliated, and with your cunning and instincts, you managed to achieve some success, rescuing a few of your fellow countrymen and slaying some of the mountain's minions." He slowly rose to his feet, towering above. Yet his gaze bore an extraordinary weight, pressing down upon Oliver's trembling soul. "In time, Bolton seized Harrenhal, and you aided him, believing you had found a bastion against the Lannisters. What you received in return was betrayal. You were handed over to the Westerlanders, and your family met a gruesome end. The only reason you still draw breath is to be subjected to the tortures of the mountain." Each word struck Oliver like a hammer, pounding against his most agonizing nerves. He curled upon the ground, weeping uncontrollably, as if trying to expel all the grief that consumed him. Outside the cell, Daisy and the guards exchanged bewildered glances, unable to comprehend why His Majesty would address a merchant who appeared utterly broken. After a long while, Oliver's sobs gradually morphed into suppressed whimpers. At that moment, Robb's voice resonated once more, no longer a mere statement, but imbued with an undeniable force. "Oliver Blinken, lift your head." Instinctively obeying the command, Oliver raised his tear-streaked face. Robb locked eyes with him. "Stand up, with the wits and instincts you have yet to forsake, with your understanding of this land and its people, and follow me to reclaim this blood debt. Let the mountain, Tywin, and all who must pay the price, repay their blood in kind." Oliver Blinken was momentarily stunned. Amid the ashes of despair, a faint glimmer of light suddenly ignited, growing ever brighter. Blood for blood. Those 4 words acted like an incantation, awakening the last vestiges of life within him. He gazed at Robb, at those eyes that seemed capable of consuming all darkness. A tumult of fervor, loyalty, and a desire for destruction erupted within him like a volcano. From some inexplicable source, he summoned strength, struggling and rolling, yearning to rise, to kneel before the young king before him. Yet Robb stepped forward, grasping his trembling arm. That hand was steady and strong, as if it could bear the weight of the world. "No need to kneel," Robb's tone softened, yet retained a regal authority. "Oliver, I see within you the courage that lies deep in your bones, as well as the rare wisdom and acumen that such tumultuous times demand. You are worthy." Oliver trembled violently, tears once more streaming down his face. But this time they were not tears of despair. They were mingled with boundless gratitude, astonishment, and the ecstasy of rebirth. He had been seen, truly seen, not as a lowly merchant, a failed resistor, or a condemned prisoner, but as a courageous and wise individual, praised by the king himself as a good man. Your Majesty, he choked out, nearly unable to articulate a complete thought. Recover swiftly, Robb urged, releasing his grip, his tone shifting to one of practicality and anticipation. I am beset with myriad affairs here. I am about to establish an office of aides, responsible for coordinating the immense flow of documents, military orders, the mobilization of troops, and a hint of sardonic amusement flickered at the corner of Robb's mouth. Especially the troublesome disputes and squabbles with various nobles and envoys. He gazed intently at Oliver, declaring, "This chief deputy of the Vice-Admiralty, I bequeath to you. What I admire is your unwavering resourcefulness in dire straits, and the loyalty you have proven with the blood of your family and kin. Chief Deputy, to serve directly under the king's core advisors is an immense trust and elevation. It is akin to ascending to the heavens." Oliver Brinken stood utterly transfixed, his round face etched with profound astonishment and disbelief. It seemed as though he beheld a grand avenue leading to vengeance and glory, laid bare before him by His Majesty's hand. In the next moment, he ceased his attempt to kneel. Instead, summoning every ounce of strength, he straightened his battered spine. Thumping his right hand heavily against his left breast, and with a hoarse yet resolute voice, he proclaimed, "Oliver Brinken swears by the old and new gods, and by the memory of his slain family. This life and soul are pledged to your Majesty. Wherever your will directs, there shall my blade be aimed. Should I breach this oath, may my soul be eternally cast into the abyss." Robb nodded, a hint of genuine satisfaction gracing his features. He patted Oliver on the shoulder, uttering no further words, and turned to exit the cell. Daisy Mormont observed the king's retreating figure, then glanced at the transformed merchant within the cell, whose eyes now blazed with a newfound fervor, and felt a chill in her heart. The king always manages to unearth pearls from the dust and awaken loyal souls from despair. This, indeed, is the true path of a conqueror, one that encompasses not only the might to move mountains, but also the wisdom to discern hearts and transmute stone into gold. Chapter 22, The King of Forging, Part 1. The military judge, Daisy Mormont, brandished a torch, her iron boots echoing dully against the damp stone steps. She followed closely behind Robb, her keen gaze sweeping over the shadowy figures languishing in the cells to either side, her brow slightly furrowed. "Your Majesty, the dungeon is foul. These individuals are mostly prisoners of rebellion or indistinguishable scum. Why must you persist in visiting them?" Robb's strides were steady, his dark crimson cloak flowing in the dim firelight like blood in motion. His voice remained calm. "Daisy, the bones cast aside by a lion may, to a starving wolf, represent a rare feast. Those confined here, Boltons and Lannisters, might not be devoid of treasures they have overlooked." Behind the bars, a figure sat against the wall. Unlike the other prisoners who huddled in despair, he sat upright. The firelight outlined an exceptionally robust silhouette, and even seated, the sinewy muscles beneath his tattered garments were apparent. His disheveled hair and beard obscured much of his face, yet his eyes, piercing through the strands, burned with an unextinguished intensity, radiating a near-obsessive calm mingled with profound weariness and animosity. A guard swiftly approached, speaking in hushed tones. "Your Majesty, this man is Connor Ines, a blacksmith. According to the Western officers who captured him, he appears somewhat suspicious, seemingly harboring a grudge against Her Majesty, and was intended as a gift to be sent to King's Landing." "Open it," Robb commanded. The harsh sound of the iron lock being opened seemed to fail to rouse Connor Ain. He did not even lift his eyelids, as if all that transpired outside held no relevance to him. Robb entered the cell alone, while Daisy stood guard at the door with a vigilant demeanor. He stood before Connor, silent, merely observing the man who appeared to have melded with the surrounding darkness. An intangible aura, a blend of battlefield brutality and regal authority, rendered the air within the cell almost suffocating. After a prolonged silence, Robb slowly spoke, his voice low, yet striking Connor's defenses like a heavy hammer. "Connor Ain, once the chief armorer of Steel Street, earning a fortune, out of reach for many lesser nobles of the North." Connor's body stiffened ever so slightly, yet he still did not raise his gaze. Robb continued, his tone as flat, as if recounting a well-known tale. "All this, simply for a moment of candid honesty towards the flower of the West, led to your utter ruin. Your family perished, loyal disciples met grim fates, and the wealth you amassed vanished into thin air." Suddenly, Connor shot his head up, his eyes, once concealed beneath disheveled hair, now aflame with crimson fury. Those memories, forcibly locked away by his iron will, bled forth with vivid brutality. The tenderness of his wife, the laughter of his children, the admiring gazes of his apprentices. The all-consuming flames, the ghastly visages of the knights from the west, and the imposing figure of a golden-haired woman who seemed to govern all. His chest heaved violently, breaths escaping him like a winded bellows, fists clenched to the point of cracking, nails digging deep into his palms, drawing forth droplets of blood. Robb's gaze pierced into the deepest wounds of his soul. You are unwilling to accept this. You squandered your fortune in pursuit of vengeance against the assassin. Alas, none dare take on such a perilous task, and even if they did, they were often deceivers. You even sought the faceless men, but the price? Ah, indeed. In the rules set forth by the gods, or by certain individuals, the worth of noble and common lives is starkly disparate. You fled to Harrenhal, believing you could survive there, yet the Riverlands hold no sanctuary. The armies of the West came and went, while the Boltons were more akin to wolves. Recognized by an old acquaintance, you became yet another trinket for the Queen Mother, confined in this lightless dungeon, awaiting your demise. Robb's tone remained unperturbed, yet each word bore the weight of 1,000 stones. Your hatred finds no refuge. Your skills lie in the dust. Master Connor, is this the conclusion you sought? To languish in decay, silently cursing this world? Silence. Connor finally erupted, springing to his feet. Had he not been shackled, he might have lunged forward. You nobles, what do you understand? Aside from plunder, slaughter, and betrayal, what else do you know? His voice, laden with excruciating pain, faltered, and his subsequent words devolved into meaningless roars. Outside the cell, Daisy instinctively tightened her grip on the sword's hilt, yet was halted by a mere glance from Robb. Not only did Robb refrain from anger, but he also took a step closer, advancing upon Connor. You do not comprehend? Allow me to enlighten you on what I truly understand. I comprehend the profound anguish I felt when Frey and Bolton betrayed me. I understand the fury ignited within me as the Lannisters sullied the Iron Throne with their treachery. More importantly, I realize that to survive in this wretched world, and to ensure the damned pay for their transgressions, mere curses and waiting in the shadows for death are utterly futile. His voice suddenly ascended, slicing through the darkness with a resolute determination. Connor Ain, I present you with a choice. Rise, stand with me. With your masterful hands and the extraordinary ideas within your mind, forge for me, and for yourself, the sharpest spear and the sturdiest shield this world has ever known. I shall provide you with the finest materials, ample manpower, and boundless trust. And my promise to you is this. Robb's lips curled into a cold, cruel smile. One day, I shall personally bring Cersei Lannister before you. I grant you the honor of delivering the first blow of execution. With her blood, may you honor your family. This is my offer to you, Robb Stark, King in the North and of the Trident. Chapter 23, The King of Forging, Part 2. The cell was enveloped in a profound silence. Only the crackling of the burning torch and Connor's heavy breaths broke the stillness. Connor Ain trembled violently, not from fear, but from an unprecedented impact. How many years had it been? He sought justice in vain, and revenge was but a distant dream. He had witnessed the hypocrisy and cunning of the nobility too many times, his heart long extinguished. Yet this young king before him was different. He tore away all pretense, presenting an irresistible proposal in the most direct and bloody manner. Not a gesture of charity, nor an act of exploitation, but a transaction? No, it felt more like an alliance forged from shared hatred and purpose. Robb continued, First, answer a few questions for me. He posed several highly specialized, even somewhat advanced inquiries. This was a professional interview. Connor, almost instinctively, articulated clearly and accurately the characteristics of the heavy yet powerful crossbow, and the quick-reacting but limited power elastic bow. He mentioned the streamlined processes of armor stamping and joint lining, and with just a few words, he outlined the basic principles of utilizing river hydraulics to drive a hammer and the concept of gear transmission. Talent. Robb's expertise in weapon manufacturing, though merely a reflection of future keyboard warriors, profoundly impressed Connor. The last vestige of hesitation dissipated. Clank. Connor Ain, once a man of lofty aspirations yet fragile existence, knelt heavily like a mountain of gold and jade, the weighty shackles crashing against the stone floor with a resounding echo. He lifted his gaze, his eyes, tangled in disheveled hair, still burning with hatred, yet ignited anew with flames of hope and loyalty. From this day forth, my life belongs to your majesty. I pledge to serve you unto death. I shall forge unparalleled weapons and crush all foes. Robb bent down, personally assisting him to his feet, and freed his wrists and ankles from their shackles. Very well. From this moment forth, you shall serve as my quartermaster, overseeing the production and distribution of all armaments. I aspire to establish an unprecedented military-industrial colossus here. In the days to come, the artisan district of Herrenberg will undergo a remarkable transformation. Connor, akin to a newly awakened tiger, will unleash an astonishing vigor. With Robb's unwavering support, resources will be efficiently consolidated, the previously scattered smithies will be meticulously organized, and the ancient workshops will be raised, replaced by initial divisions of labor and collaboration in the workshops. The forge will burn day and night, the sound of hammers resounding like thunder. Robb's inaugural task for Connor is to craft a bespoke weapon tailored specifically for him. Upon the conception of the spear, Connor's eyes gleamed with excitement. He personally selected a century-old blackwood core, directing the artisans to repeatedly soak it in a special oil, air-dry it, and polish it until the spear shaft exuded a profound ebony hue, cool and weighty to the touch, yet possessing remarkable resilience. The spearhead, measuring 3 feet 3 inches, 1 meter, is forged from the finest steel by Connor himself, meticulously ground on 8 faces, gleaming with a chilling radiance. Its edges sharp as a knife, ultimately culminating in a heart-stopping triangular armor-piercing tip. The spear but is also crafted from high-quality steel, capable of being wielded as a blunt weapon against foes. Robb's spear measures a total of 15 feet, 4 meters, and weighs 45 pounds, rendering it virtually unwieldy for an ordinary knight. Simultaneously, the Jiulong spear designed for infantry and the more colossal Tianlong siege spear, specifically tailored for cavalry, have emerged. The Jiulong spear stretches 8 feet in length, entirely crafted from fine steel, its crescent axe blade and armor-piercing tip menacingly formidable, weighing 60 pounds yet appearing weightless in Robb's hands. The Tianlong siege spear is an even more imposing 13 feet long and weighs 90 pounds, seemingly forged for a mythic giant, exuding an aura capable of rending all as it stands. In terms of arrows, Robb proposed the design of the main needle armor-piercing arrow, eschewing traditional Western cylindrical forms in favor of the advanced Eastern structure with a tapered shaft. The arrow body, elongated and slender, employs a folding forging technique to enhance hardness, specifically engineered for penetrating armor. Even more impressive to Connor was Robb's insight into armor. A type known as dark armor was created. Its exterior resembles an ordinary mid-length tunic, subtle and elegant, yet it is lined with cold-forged manganese steel plates. This design provides exceptional protection, far surpassing plate armor and flexibility, while also offering significant concealment. It is suitable for clandestine operations alone or can serve as inner armor beneath plate armor, greatly enhancing survivability. The true surprise, however, comes from Connor's Bai Qi assistance, the ice needle plate spring crossbow. This revolutionary design discards the cumbersome torsion bundles, utilizing multi-layered quenched steel plates as a power source, the plate spring, resulting in a compact structure of incredible power and a range that far exceeds that of ordinary crossbows. Most crucially, its core components can be standardized for mass production, allowing for swift assembly by merely 3 operators. When the prototype was tested, the heavy crossbow bolts easily shattered targets 100 paces away, and Connor beamed with a heartfelt smile not seen in years. Excellent. We shall name it Ice Needle, Robb declared on the spot, the name both fitting and lethal. Subsequently, the enlarged version of the Ice Needle, the Hail Crossbow, along with the spring-powered trebuchet capable of swiftly and accurately launching stones or incendiary projectiles, entered the trial production phase. The formidable siege behemoth, the weighted heavy trebuchet known as the Mountain Collapse, began to materialize from mere blueprints into reality. For several consecutive days, Robb would seize every opportunity to immerse himself in the workshop or study with Connor, the two of them engrossed in the blueprints and models, gesticulating and deliberating with an intensity that rendered them oblivious to the passage of time. A military colossus, embodying epic-defining insights and the pinnacle of craftsmanship, was quietly taking shape on the battle-scarred land of Herrenhal. Meanwhile, Connor Ein, a once-broken avenger, found renewed purpose under Robb's recognition and the shared ambition, ultimately returning wholeheartedly to become the indispensable master craftsman behind Robb's burgeoning dominion. Chapter 24. The Judgment of Winter. Beneath the shadow of Herrenhal, justice arrived in the coldest, most meticulous manner. A vast training ground was temporarily transformed into a solemn and austere courtroom. There were no opulent adornments, only the imposing presence of spears and the frigid gazes of northern warriors. Atop the platform sat the military judge, Daisy Mormont, poised in the central seat. Her stature as upright as a frost-laden pine, her youthful visage shrouded in the frost of the eternal winter, devoid of any superfluous expression. Her very existence embodied the essence of law and ironclad decree. Flanking her were not solely martial figures, but a peculiar, yet profoundly significant grand jury. Among them were several small nobles from the Riverlands, their complex gazes betraying the scars of war, priests clutching the sacred texts, their somber expressions attempting to imbue the proceedings with divine gravitas. Scholars from the Citadel, astonished by this starkly different mode of judgment, furiously documenting the proceedings, yet more prominently. Common folk from the Riverlands, their faces darkened, hands calloused, their eyes a tapestry of seething hatred and numbing sorrow. Their kin and homes had been laid waste beneath the iron hooves of the Westerland's army. To have them partake in the judgment was Robb Stark's unique interpretation of justice, allowing the victims to witness firsthand the fate of their oppressors. Over 5,000 captives from the Westerlands were escorted in batches to stand trial. The entire process was lengthy and intricate, yet imbued with an undeniable, almost brutal sense of fairness. The trial procedures, meticulously crafted by Robb himself, were strictly adhered to. Evidence was presented, witnesses were cross-examined, and self-defense was permitted, though, in the face of overwhelming evidence, such defenses often proved feeble. Only those of knightly rank were deemed worthy to face Daisy and the jury's icy scrutiny on the stand. Their transgressions were more specific, their impacts more severe. As for the vast majority of common soldiers, their acts of pillaging and slaughter were largely summarized through troop rosters and collective testimonies, read aloud by military officials, followed by a mass verdict from the jury. Even so, this unprecedented trial endured for a full 3 days and nights. The bonfires blazed continuously, illuminating every face, some marked by fear, others by defiance, regret, or numbness. On the third day at dusk, as the last batch of records was meticulously verified, Daisy Mormont rose, her voice resonating across the entire assembly ground, cold as steel, severing all remnants of hope. Upon investigation, Sir Amory Lorch and his accomplices, totaling 117, have mercilessly slaughtered innocent villages. The evidence is irrefutable, their crimes heinous, and they are sentenced to death by dismemberment. The executioner will be determined by a draw from the surviving relatives of the afflicted villages. As the pronouncement echoed, the jury, comprising commoners from the affected regions, erupted in long-suppressed weeping and low growls, a poignant mixture of vengeance and grim satisfaction. Amory Lorch turned ashen, yearning to scream curses, but was brutally silenced by a soldier from the north, who struck him forcefully with the hilt of a sword, dragging him away amidst a mouthful of blood. His fate would be infinitely more tragic than a death on the battlefield. Next, 942 individuals, who participated in or orchestrated the massacre and the abuse of captives, were sentenced to public execution by beheading. Once again, a wave of despair washed over the room as the names of the Western officers were called, their faces turning ashen. Beheading, while a form of mercy compared to dismemberment, still marked the end of life. The remaining 1,805, having pillaged but not directly engaged in large-scale slaughter, were sentenced to hard labor for 3 to 10 years. They were to rebuild homes and restore livelihoods for the war-ravaged populace within the Riverlands, redeeming their sins through toil. Daisy paused, her gaze sweeping over the breathless captives below, and continued. Among those sentenced are over 40 nobles, including viscounts, barons, and landed knights. All judgments are supported by overwhelming evidence. The procedures are rigorous, adhering to the laws of both the old and new gods, and in accordance with the wartime code enacted by His Majesty, King Robb Stark of the North. She deliberately emphasized the procedures and code, signaling to all observers, particularly the scholars and clerics, that the rule of King Robb Stark is founded upon order, not mere brutality. As for earls and higher-ranking nobles and their direct kin, they shall not be judged at this time. This is a calculated political decision, recognizing that the North also has captives in the hands of the West. With Sansa Stark perilously situated in the lion's den, these hostages are vital bargaining chips. Publicly trying these great nobles would elicit the most savage retaliation from Tywin. Robb's ruthlessness is reserved solely for those who can be slain, not for mindless outbursts. Following the conclusion of the trials, approximately 3,000 Western soldiers escaped the sentences of death or hard labor. They faced not blades, but a different trial of labor. According to Robb's instituted system of labor for sustenance, only through diligent work could they earn their daily bread. In this war-ravaged land, the reconstruction efforts demanded considerable manpower, and these robust soldiers represented a readily available resource. Contrary to many expectations, the majority of these 3,000 were surprisingly earnest. They had witnessed their comrades face trial and execution, and recognized that their only hope for survival lay in relentless labor. Digging, building walls, transporting timber, they toiled in silence, exchanging their sweat for daily sustenance. For these soldiers, largely hailing from impoverished backgrounds, the mere existence of life and food was far more desirable than death on the battlefield or execution. Among the throng of over 3,000 individuals, a covert observation team composed of military judges and junior officers silently scrutinized the crowd. Their discerning gaze meticulously evaluated each surrendered soldier. The calloused hands indicated seasoned veterans or farmers accustomed to labor. Their steady eyes reflected a relatively uncomplicated mindset. Their unwavering diligence signified fundamental integrity, and their unyielding obedience embodied discipline. Soon, over 1,000 promising candidates meeting these criteria were selected and gathered at a distribution point. There lay heaps of bundles of washed, deep gray coarse military uniforms, the official color of the Northern Army. A robust veteran, bearing a scarred visage, was the first to receive his own set of gray attire. Without a moment's hesitation, he discarded his tattered garments, remnants of the Lannister family's dark crimson undergarment barely discernible beneath the wear. He forcefully crumpled the last vestiges of that once representative red, his eyes flickering with a complex array of emotions, shame, resolve, ultimately morphing into fierce determination as he hurled the fabric to the ground, stomping it with his worn leather boots. This act ignited a spark among the nearby soldiers, who had also received their gray uniforms. Initially taken aback, they were soon inspired to follow suit, shedding their remnants of the West and eagerly donning the fresh, deep gray military garb. It was as if by wearing this uniform, they could sever ties with their former selves, rebirthing into a new existence. This scene was keenly observed by Robb from his elevated vantage point. A subtle smile graced the corners of his lips. With a balance of benevolence and authority, he sought to refine and purify this battalion, forged through fear, labor, and a voluntary renunciation of their past, could, with rigorous training and ideological indoctrination, emphasizing the Lannisters' treachery and the honor and rewards of the Northern Army, emerge as a reliable force under his command. The allure of the Northern Army's unparalleled pay, accolades for valor, and generous pensions held a fatal attraction for these individuals of humble origins. Chapter 25. The warm sun of the South in stark contrast to the frigid winter faced by the captives of the West. Robb extended a spring-like warmth and respect towards the nobles and knights of the South. Unable to directly conquer the vast southern territories at present, he recognized that acquiring tangible benefits, ransom and provisions, was the most prudent strategy. He personally conducted a solemn funeral for the fallen Lord Tully and his son, Daikon Tully, bestowing upon them the dignity befitting soldiers, and ensured that their remains, along with the Tully family's ancestral sword, Heartsbreak, were returned intact to the Tully family of Riverrun. This gesture sent ripples through the southern nobility. In contrast to Lord Tywin's brutal tendencies to annihilate entire families, Robb Stark's chivalrous spirit and respect for his adversaries garnered him numerous admirers among the people of the South. He even utilized the expansive courtyard of Harrenhal to host a small martial tournament for the captured southern nobles and knights. In the absence of life and death struggles, there prevailed instead a spirit of martial exchange and shared insights. Robb himself occasionally took to the field. His martial skills, derived from a legacy of kings, were characterized by their simplicity, efficiency, and remarkable power, leaving all spectators in awe. At the banquet, his eloquence was extraordinary, and he possessed unique perspectives on military affairs, history, and even the welfare of the people, devoid of the rough demeanor often attributed to the folk of the North. Charisma is indeed an invisible weapon. Soon, Robb became an idol to many young noblemen and knights from the South, particularly the valiant Garland Tyrell of Highgarden. This young knight, utterly captivated by Robb's personal charm and illustrious feats, summoned the courage to publicly express his request after one such banquet. "Your Majesty," Garland knelt on one knee, his eyes ablaze with sincerity, "your valor and wisdom shine as brightly as the sun and moon above. I humbly beseech you to allow me to remain by your side as your squire and learn the true path of a commander." Upon hearing this, the room fell into stunned silence. The second son of House Tyrell desired to serve as the squire to the king in the north? This was nothing short of astonishing. However, Robb smiled and assisted him to his feet, patting his shoulder. "Sir Garland, your courage and sincerity move me. Yet, matters of squirehood pertain to diplomatic relations and require caution. Nevertheless, I do have a more significant mission I wish to entrust to you." Robb's gaze deepened. "I hope you can act as my representative and discreetly return to King's Landing to confer with your father the esteemed Lord Mace Tyrell. Convey to him my goodwill and desire for peace. Inform him that the roses of Highgarden should not be bound with the honorless lions. Garland, filled with excitement, swore by the Seven, rest assured, your majesty. I, Garland Tyrell, vow that if the treaty fails, I shall return to Harrenhal and continue as your captive. I shall harbor no grievances. Robb's stratagem was masterfully executed. Garland's journey back to King's Landing with his secret missive was itself a potent signal. In truth, following the news of Robb's capture of Harrenhal and the slaying of Ser Amory Lorch, the power core of Highgarden underwent an intense reevaluation. Lord Mace Tyrell was eager to entertain Robb's proposal within the missive that favored the Tyrell's claim to the Iron Throne, as if he could already envision his own coronation. Lady Marjorie Tyrell, too, was filled with curiosity and interest regarding the young Wolf Lord, whose meteoric rise was steeped in legend, her youthful heart oscillating between power and romance. Ultimately, the sagacious Queen of Thorns, Lady Olenna, made her decisive pronouncement. The old lion of Tywin has begun to show signs of fatigue, while this young wolf from the north bears sharp claws and a keen understanding of how to win hearts. We shall immediately cease all substantial military support to the Westerlands and establish a de facto truce with Robb Stark. Our aim is to navigate the tides and await the opportune moment for our entrance. The first gesture of sincerity from House Tyrell was swiftly delivered to the imprisoned Harlan Stark at the Fountain of Women, leading to the safe release of the heir to Casterly Rock. As Harrion Karstark arrived at Harrenhal, weary from his journey, Robb personally welcomed him. Without excessive words, the two northern men, adhering to ancient tradition, exchanged hearty blows upon each other's chests. Robb, of course, tempered his strength before embracing and indulging in copious amounts of ale. All animosities and resentments, born from misunderstandings and transient estrangement, dissipated in the warmth of camaraderie and the forthright nature of the Northmen. Harrion directed all his ire towards the machinations of Tywin Lannister, kneeling before Robb to reaffirm his loyalty. Your Grace, the loyalty of House Karstark shall forever belong to House Stark of Winterfell. My sword is drawn for you. Robb graciously helped him to his feet, officially bestowing upon him the title of Earl of Carhold, and commanded him to circumvent enemy-controlled territories, return to the north, consolidate the forces of Carhold, and partake in the eradication of the remnants of House Bolton and the Ironborn. The return of House Karstark resonated like a clarion call. Soon after, tidings poured in from the Dustin family of the Dreadfort, who pledged fealty in light of Robb's promised future rewards, as well as from the House Ryswell of the Weeping Water, reaffirming their loyalty to House Stark. The situation in the north, buoyed by Robb's miraculous victories in the south and a series of astute political maneuvers, swiftly stabilized and clarified. Deprived of external support and dwindling in forces, Ramsay Snow could no longer maintain his grip on Winterfell, compelled to abandon the northern capital and retreat in disarray to his stronghold of the Dreadfort, where he would cling to his last stronghold. Meanwhile, the invading Ironborn were steadily suppressed by the Northern Coalition, confined to a few coastal outposts. Their obliteration merely a matter of time. Chapter 26. A paragon of virtue, a pillar of ambition, this city, scarred yet resilient, was awakening at an unprecedented pace. The clamorous shouts of soldiers training in the barracks, the rhythmic clang of craftsmen in the forges, and the rising smoke from the refugee camps outside harmonized into a vibrant symphony of life. At the heart of this symphony stood the young king, Robb Stark, with hair like flame and a stature that commanded respect. The relentless days of warfare, bloodshed, and strategizing had not crushed him. Rather, they had forged him into a figure of greater resilience, his brilliance now more tempered. The burgeoning power within him surged ever higher, seemingly boundless. However, a slight furrow creased Robb's brow. The larger his domain became, the greater the populace he commanded, and thus the complexities of governance multiplied exponentially. The reorganization and training of the army, the management and transformation of surrendered soldiers, the resettlement and appeasement of refugees, the diplomatic negotiations with various factions, the implementation and fortification of internal systems, and the procurement and distribution of logistical supplies. All these myriad concerns wove together like countless delicate threads into a vast web. Despite his extraordinary vigor and the support of allies like Wylis Manderley and Oliver Blinken, he felt the weight of immense pressure. A formidable power not only requires fierce warriors to charge into battle, but also necessitates a sagacious figure capable of orchestrating the larger picture, governing internal affairs, and planning for the long term. Robb Stark could indeed be the sword that rends the ranks of his foes, yet he must not, and should not, be burdened by the minutiae of governance that could dull his edge. He yearned for not just a pair, but a multitude of hands capable of overseeing the grand scheme, identifying gaps, and even pioneering new frontiers. Amidst this torrent of thoughts, a system notification resonated in his mind like a refreshing rain after a prolonged drought. The host has achieved a significant victory, gradually dismantling the enemy through political means, advancing towards a unified reform. Phase reward activated. Choose one of three. Option 1. The Spear of Destiny pierces the heavens, the ultimate strike of the 13 techniques of the Overlord Spear, concentrating power into a single point, breaking armies, cities, and myriad laws. However, it should only be wielded by those whose physical and spiritual prowess is unparalleled. To force its use may result in severe injury or even death. Option 2. 8,000 loyal soldiers, granting the authority to summon a special elite troop of absolute loyalty. Well-equipped and fierce in combat, initially numbering 8,000. The soldiers will conform to world rules, emerging in a reasonable manner, e.g., conscripted soldiers rescued in battle, mercenary groups seeking to join, or hidden rebels from the mountains and forests. Option 3. Random summoning of a peerless talent. Randomly summon a top-tier talent from the vast annals of Chinese history, such as the military sage Wu Qi, the divine general Han Xin, the strategist Zhang Liang, the capable minister Xiao He, the sleeping dragon Zhuge Liang, the dual-talented Wang Meng, the war god Li Jing, or the loyal patriot Yue Fei. The summoned individual will fully adapt to the current world rules, possessing an independent personality. Memories. Chinese memories will exist in dreams and fragmented inheritances, and corresponding extraordinary talents, already adapted to current world rules and technological levels. With a high initial loyalty to the host's ideals, the manner of their appearance will conform to world logic, e.g., wandering mercenaries, scholars from afar, slaves, or advisors to a fallen noble. The tempest within his heart surged instantaneously. Robb's gaze flickered like lightning, swiftly scanning the three enticing options. Each represented a formidable force or potential. 8,000 loyal soldiers, an elite troop of absolute loyalty, well-equipped, and fierce in battle. The allure was undeniable. To acquire such power instantly would pose a direct threat to Taiwan's heartland. Troops are one of the fundamental pillars in times of chaos. However, a domineering smile curled at the corners of Robb's mouth. His northern army, forged through the blood-soaked wedding of despair, had followed him to achieve a miraculous turnaround, crushing 30,000 coalition forces outside Herenhal. While their equipment may require enhancement and tactics need refinement, their loyalty and courage had already been proven in the crucible of fire and blood. Given time, under his leadership and new systems, Robb was confident that this army could evolve into an invincible force surpassing any so-called elite. Troops can be trained, amassed, and equipped through captured arms. This was not the only nor the necessary choice. His gaze shifted to the second option. The Spear of Destiny pierces the heavens. The description was overwhelmingly magnificent. Breaking armies, breaking cities, breaking all laws. This resembles a forbidden technique from mythological legends, representing the ultimate sublimation of personal martial prowess. It is akin to a military treasure, even brushing against the realm of rules, transforming the wielder into a true adversary capable of confronting thousands, or even a singular individual commanding an army. However, the small print below falls like a bucket of ice water. It is not to be recklessly employed by those who have not achieved the pinnacle of physical and spiritual mastery. To force its application may result in severe injury or even death. What does ultimate truly signify? Robb senses that the overwhelming power he has inherited has yet to reach its zenith. The self-inflicted demise of Xiang Yu at Wu River, though influenced by character and fate, raises questions about whether his physical and spiritual essence had attained the so-called pinnacle as defined by the system. This lethal move resembles a double-edged sword. Its boundless might could just as easily inflict harm upon the user before it strikes the enemy, until one's own strength reaches its apex. This temptation appears as an elusive specter, a source of unnecessary troubles, akin to a chicken rib. Thus, the only remaining answer is a random summoning of unparalleled talents. Chapter 27. Unparalleled Talents. Pillars of Ambition. What he truly requires now and in the future is a pillar capable of orchestrating the grand scheme, shaping the world, and laying the foundation for eternity. Before the armies march, provisions must be prepared. This ancient wisdom from the East encapsulates the importance of logistics and strategy. The planning of grand strategies, the organization of domestic affairs, the cultivation of talent, the resolution of technical challenges, and the refinement of systems. These aspects, which may not manifest directly on the battlefield amidst the clash of blades, are precisely the cornerstones determining how far a faction can advance, how stable it can become, and whether it can truly achieve hegemony. The development of the Northern Kingdom has entered the fast lane, akin to a war chariot accelerating relentlessly. As its driver, Robb increasingly feels overwhelmed. He requires a co-pilot, an engineer capable of overseeing the entire operation, and even a navigator who can illuminate the path ahead. Should he come, there would be no worries from the rear, with endless provisions and armaments, allowing Robb to devote all his energy to expansion. His acumen in identifying and utilizing talent, along with logistical support, makes him the unparalleled choice for solidifying foundations. Zhu Yuanzhang, a polymath in military and political affairs, excelling in domestic governance, diplomacy, military strategy, and technology, such as the wooden ox and flowing horse, he stands as the perfect aide and strategist. With him at the helm, Robb could confidently wield the sharpest spear. Wu Qi, an exceptional military trainer and statesman. The brilliance of the Wei Wu army attests to his military prowess. His reforms in the Chu state reveal his governance skills. Securing his allegiance would ensure a formidable army and well-structured domestic affairs. Wang Ming, a key figure in assisting Fu Jian to unify the North, he is a capable minister in chaotic times, adept at navigating complex situations. Li Jing, a master of battlefield artistry, his campaigns are like textbooks. His use of troops is flexible and unorthodox. Yue Fei, unmatched in loyalty and bravery. His military training and combat execution are impeccable. The discipline of his troops, freezing to death without dismantling homes and starving without pillaging, is precisely the model Robb seeks to establish in his own army. Even Han Xin, the strongest spear, undefeated in open battle, with the ability to command vast numbers. Should he join, Robb would face no further concerns on the battlefield. The list presented by the system gleams with brilliance, featuring individuals whose names are etched in the annals of history, titans capable of laying the foundation for an entire era. Regardless of who arrives, it will undoubtedly enhance and fortify his dominion significantly. Although the term random implies uncertainty, which may hinder the immediate acquisition of the urgently needed administrative talent. Risk and reward coexist. What if the summoned figure is none other than Xiao He or Zhu Yuanzhang? Furthermore, even the alternative options boast extraordinary talents, each capable of excelling in their respective domains, thereby alleviating his burdens immensely. More importantly, the system notes an initial loyalty level marked by a profound alignment with his vision. This effectively mitigates the greatest concern of loyalty. There is no need to fear a formidable talent overshadowing him or to guard against the weight of an unwieldy legacy. For these extraordinary individuals, from the moment of their arrival, wholeheartedly endorse the grand enterprise that Robb Stark aspires to establish. What a remarkable assurance this is. Talents are rare, particularly the elite ones worthy of entrusting the whole strategy. Given such an opportunity, how could it be overlooked? Should he choose the visible strength of 8,000 troops, or a potential pillar of boundless possibilities? Should he opt for a temporarily unusable forbidden technique, or a superlative intellect capable of transforming both himself and the entire faction? The answer is self-evident. Without any hesitation, Robb, with unwavering resolve, issued the command within the depths of his heart. I choose 3. Selection confirmed. Option 3. Random summoning of unparalleled national heroes. Summoning in progress. It felt as though time itself had stagnated, or perhaps it was merely a fleeting moment. Robb sensed a mystifying wave traversing through the boundless tapestry of time and space, leaving an indelible mark upon the rules of Westeros. Summoning successful. Random result. The war god Han Xin. Han Xin will soon appear in proximity to the host's activity area. Please prepare for recruitment. Han Xin. Not the much-desired Xiao He or Zhu Yuanzhang, who could secure the rear, but the war god Han Xin. The one lauded as unparalleled among national heroes, unmatched in merit, and rarely seen in history. The Han Xin who masterfully executed strategies such as feigning pathways and ambushing the enemy, who fought against overwhelming odds with brilliance and ingenuity. By the heavens, this is utterly unexpected. Following an immense shock, an eruption of joy akin to a volcanic explosion surged forth, accompanied by a sense of destiny, the embodiment of valor from the fierce legacy of Xiang Yu, the Hegemon of the Western Chu, the pinnacle of strategic warfare heralded by Han Xin, the war god. In this historical continuum, where rivals were destined to clash, the two most luminous military prodigies, who have experienced countless joys and sorrows, are now converging under the banner of Robb Stark in this chaotic era of Westeros. What dramatic irony! What a manifestation of fate! An unprecedented surge of passion and anticipation dispelled the accumulated fatigue and anxiety of recent days. In Robb's eyes, a fierce brilliance erupted, as if he were beholding the grand tapestry of the future, himself, like a reincarnated conqueror, wielding the celestial dragon's city-breaking spear, leading the charge into the fray, tearing apart the lines of any foe daring to obstruct his path, shattering their courage and resolve with unparalleled might. Meanwhile, within the heart of the army, the military sage Han Xin orchestrated the strategy with finesse, effortlessly commanding the iron tide of the northern territories and beyond, transforming into a myriad of exquisite combinations of strikes, maneuvering, encircling, lying in ambush, and feigning movements elevated warfare to an art form, minimizing the cost of victory while maximizing the spoils. He, Robb Stark, was the sharpened blade that rent the enemies asunder, the very soul and banner of the army. Han Xin, in turn, was the master of this blade, the cerebral force directing the entire war machine, the guarantor and magnifier of triumph. This perfect union of strength and strategy, this supreme fusion of valor and wisdom, who in all the Seven Kingdoms could possibly withstand it? The schemes of Tywin Lannister? Before absolute power and top-tier strategy, they were naught but the squawking of chickens, the Dothraki's roaring charge, against layers of intricate calculations and a meticulously prepared formation. They would only meet a bloody demise. Even those shadowy hands of purported divine, while lurking in the future, with Han Xion's wisdom as their ally, would find a newfound confidence and leverage to tear aside that veil, to unveil the truth hidden beyond. Han Xion. Excellent. Robb could not help but murmur, his voice brimming with uncontainable excitement and anticipation. He envisioned the military history of Westeros being irrevocably rewritten by the advent of this military sage. His own path to domination would grow unimpeded with the addition of this national hero. The future's panorama, suddenly rendered clearer and more magnificent with Han Xion's presence, brimmed with infinite possibilities and a fervent desire for conquest. Where the royal banner pointed, there lay the path of aspiration. This journey would undoubtedly shine even brighter with the sages joining, sweeping all before it. Robb inhaled deeply the crisp morning air, feeling invigorated. He turned and strode purposefully towards the castle's interior, his steps resolute and powerful. Send word. Intensify preparations, drill the troops. Our march shall not cease here. Chapter 28. The Return of the National Hero. A light, cheerful footfall interrupted his reverie. Arya slipped in like a nimble cat, carrying the chill of the outdoors with her. Robb. Her voice was bright, tinged with a barely perceptible excitement. I think I may have found you an eccentric, but perhaps a genius. Robb turned, a gentle smile gracing his face. For this sister, who had endured much yet emerged all the more resilient, he harbored boundless patience and affection. Oh, what manner of peculiar individual could pique the interest of our Miss Arya Stark so? His name is Hellos, Arya gestured, probably a year or two older than you. He is taciturn, often retreating into the shadows. However, during our last expedition to clear out the mercenaries near Ruby Shore, I was nearly ambushed by a man feigning death. It was he who, with a sharpened stick, pierced the man's throat from an unexpectedly advantageous angle, swift enough that I scarcely caught a glimpse. She paused, a glimmer of recollection flashing in her eyes. Later, I discovered that his gaze was unlike any other. As we passed a burnt village, he could discern the direction and approximate time of the fire's spread from the thickness and direction of the ashes. Upon seeing the footprints left by retreating soldiers, he could estimate their numbers and whether they fled in panic or retreated in an orderly fashion, much like how a shadow could sense imperceptible to ordinary folk. Robb's heart quickened slightly. An extraordinary insight? A keen intuition regarding the traces of the battlefield? This sounded far from ordinary. He stifled his excitement and inquired nonchalantly. Where is he now? He is in the castle. I have placed him in the infirmary to assist. He learns swiftly but tends to isolate himself. As if wary of everyone, Arya replied. I do not believe he is a bad person. He is simply a bit peculiar. Bring him to me, Robb commanded. His voice calm, yet imbued with an undeniable authority. An intuition transcending time and space, mingled with the vague impressions of that unparalleled hero chronicled in history, led him to almost ascertain that this rough gem Arya had inadvertently discovered was very likely the military sage Han Xin summoned by the system for him. When Hellos was brought before Robb, he appeared quite unremarkable, lean and ragged. His face bore the pallor of malnutrition and the weathered marks of long wandering. He kept his head bowed, taciturn, as if wishing to shrink into the shadows. However, when Robb's penetrating gaze fell upon him, Hellos trembled imperceptibly, instinctively raising his head. In that moment, Robb beheld something in his eyes, not humility or timidity, but a deeply buried calmness akin to a cold star. coupled with an indescribable insight as if he comprehended the laws governing the ebb and flow of the world. Though this brilliance flickered and was soon shrouded by caution and silence, Robb was already convinced. It was him. In the ensuing days, Robb did not hasten to unveil the truth, but, under the guise of scouting talent, engaged Hellos in numerous discussions. He spoke of military strategy. From basic formations to complex logistical support, he discussed geography, from the swamps of Nex End to the deserts of Dorne. He even delved into history, from the ancient Dawn Age to the recent wars of usurpers. Initially, Hellos was reticent, responding with caution. Yet, Robb's incisive questions, often striking at the heart of matters, gradually ignited Hellos's competitive spirit. This silent youth began to reveal his astonishing talents. He possessed an almost instinctual grasp of troop deployment, terrain utilization, and the seizing of opportunities, often articulating critical points that eluded the notice of ordinary individuals with an economy of words. When he spoke passionately, he would unconsciously sketch a rudimentary map on the ground with his fingers, his thoughts so lucid and his strategies so far-reaching that the young officers, including Cadwood, were left utterly astounded. The exhilaration surging within Robb was akin to a tidal wave. This was not merely an extraordinary gift. It was a manifestation of a military intellect honed through rigorous training and systematic thought. He was a prodigious talent capable of transcending the mundane, elevating warfare to the realm of art. After several profound discussions, the remarkable talent concealed beneath his tattered garments began to reveal itself. Robb harbored no doubt any longer. This youth named Hellos was indeed the military sage Han Xin. With this identification confirmed, the subsequent endeavor to recruit him became paramount. Robb understood that a genius of Han Xin's caliber, unparalleled in the realm of heroes, would inherently possess immense pride. Yet his tumultuous past may harbor insecurities and a yearning for recognition. Politically naive, yet deeply loyal, managing such an individual demanded exceptional finesse. Robb exerted considerable effort, employing multiple approaches. In terms of emotional appeal, he emulated the past of Liu Bang, bestowing upon Hellos an extraordinary level of care and respect. He personally inquired about Hellos' daily needs, sharing his own rations of meat with him and noticing his thin attire. He generously draped his own warm cloak around his shoulders. Observing Hellos' interest in a particular southern fruit, he ensured that it would be placed before him at the next banquet. Such meticulous attention profoundly impacted Hellos, who had long endured the harshness of life on the fringes of society. Moreover, Robb arranged for Oliver Blinken, a perceptive and sociable individual, to frequently accompany Hellos. Oliver engaged him as a friend, steering clear of military matters, instead discussing local customs, urban anecdotes, subtly alleviating any loneliness or sense of alienation that Hellos might harbor. The most critical step, however, was Robb's intentional, yet casual encouragement for Arya to frequently check on Hellos' well-being and converse with him about the struggles of the common folk they encountered along their journey. Arya, with her innate innocence and devoid of the airs of a noblewoman, recounted the tragic experiences of civilians amidst the chaos of war, striking a chord with Han Xin's profound empathy for the plight of the people. This exchange, rooted in mutual compassion, resonated far more deeply than any contrived attempts at persuasion. Indeed, Han Xin, Hellos, with his interwoven pride and insecurity, and his yearning for recognition coupled with deep loyalty, found himself almost defenseless against Robb's tender and meticulously crafted emotional overtures. The bonds of affection tightened imperceptibly. His gaze towards Robb gradually transformed from initial wariness and scrutiny to gratitude, trust, and even a hint of admiration. Regarding respect, Robb was equally diligent. He resolutely dismissed opposition, particularly soothing concerns from generals like Great John, who were wary of suddenly promoting an obscure vagabond. On a splendid autumn day, in the grand courtyard of Herrenberg, he orchestrated a solemn and magnificent ceremony to formally induct Hellos into the ranks. Banners fluttered and armor gleamed in the sunlight. At the Grand Assembly, senior military leaders gathered alongside numerous allied nobles from Hegemon and the Northern Territories. Upon the elevated earth platform, Robb Stark, the king in the north and of the Trident, personally bestowed a meticulously crafted sword, adorned with the sigil of the dire wolf, upon Hellos, who stood clad in a pristine officer's uniform. Still slender, yet with a resolute posture. Before the eyes of thousands, Robb's voice resonated powerfully across the gathering. Henceforth, Hellos is appointed as the chief of staff of the newly established general staff. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the varied expressions of those present, continuing to declare. In recognition of his exceptional capacity for learning and adaptation, that he is also designated as the Admiral of the Navy. In name, Helos, Han Xin, had ascended to become the second-in-command of the army, his authority encompassing strategic planning, operational directives, the training of the entire army, and the development of a nascent naval force, thus wielding considerable power. This unreserved trust and extraordinary honor caused Helos to tremble slightly, kneeling on one knee. He accepted the sword, and upon raising his gaze, his eyes brimmed with gratitude for the recognition and a fierce determination to serve the king. "I shall exert every effort to repay your majesty's kindness," he declared, his voice not loud yet remarkably resolute. However, Robb had learned well from history. He employed Han Xin's intellect, involving him in all significant strategic planning, military organization, and the formulation of operational plans. Yet he ensured that Helos would never have the chance to meddle in personnel appointments or the cultivation of junior officers, nor would he be allowed to command any established unit independently. Simultaneously, a confidential directive was issued to the commander of the inner guard, Kana, employing the highest levels of secrecy to monitor Helos, Han Xin, closely, observing his associations, but without interfering in his normal duties unless substantial threats to the king and the realm were detected. Under this dual safeguard, Han Xin remained in a position to utilize his talents, yet without the means to foster disloyalty. In truth, Han Xin's emotional intelligence proved insufficient for him to assemble a faction capable of threatening Robb. His brilliance primarily shone in the realms of tactical simulations and strategic concepts, while he exhibited notable clumsiness in navigating the complexities of human relations and power dynamics. His response to Robb's trust and elevation was one of pure gratitude and an urgent desire to reciprocate, devoid of any trace of the arrogance that characterized historical figures. This realization brought a quiet sigh of relief to Robb, reinforcing his confidence in the efficacy of his control measures. Chapter 29. Failure in Gunpowder Production? The Shackles of Divine Will. Boom. Once again, the testing ground echoed with a dull burn, rather than the anticipated explosion. The mixture of sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal powder merely erupted in a thick plume of smoke from the ceramic vessel, transitioning into a stubborn, slow burn, emitting a pungent odor. Robb Stark, the king in the north end of the trident, stood firm, his ice-blue eyes seemingly gathering a tempest within their depths. Beneath his black attire, marked with splotches of powder, his muscles tensed slightly. The 73rd time, he murmured to himself, "It is not a matter of proportion." He adhered strictly to the optimized ratio of 1 sulfur to 2 nitrates and 3 charcoals from memory, even refining it to the theoretically superior proportions of potassium nitrate at 7464, sulfur at 1185, and charcoal at 1351. It is not a question of technique either. The raw materials underwent repeated purification, grinding, and uniform mixing. He even attempted granulation to enhance combustion efficiency. Yet, time and again, his efforts were mocked, yielding only a combustible effect and failing to produce the explosive power necessary to propel the projectile. His thoughts turned towards a more perilous and advanced path, nitrocellulose. He vividly recalled the chemical equation. Gas generated from the calcination of nitrates is passed into water to produce nitric acid, which is then used to treat ordinary cotton to obtain nitrocellulose. This was a propellant far mightier than black powder. Further still, mercury, when reacted with alcohol and nitric acid, could yield fulminate of mercury, which, when encased in manually pressed copper caps, represented a revolutionary firing mechanism, capable of ushering weaponry directly into the era of ignition. Mercury could be obtained by heating cinnabar, mercury sulfide, while alcohol could be distilled. Theoretically, this path was clear. However, reality dealt him a heavy blow once more. The crucial step of preparing nitric acid repeatedly failed. The gases seemed to have lost their inherent reactivity, with absorption in water occurring at an abominably low efficiency. The resulting liquid was only weakly acidic, entirely inadequate for nitration. A dreadful thought emerged within Robb's mind. Had the deities of this world fundamentally eradicated the chemical reactions necessary for gunpowder production? Had they locked the potential for societal evolution from a technical standpoint? Buzz, just as his anger swelled within him, nearly compelling him to kick over the utterly useless absorption vessel, a cold, emotionless mechanical voice, as if long awaited, suddenly erupted from the depths of his chaotic and furious consciousness. Abnormal disturbance and profound questioning of the fundamental rules of the world, energy-releasing chemical reactions, detected. Analyzing correlation. Information unlocked. One of the layers of divine interference. Suppression of energy release rules in the material realm. Effect. Inertial modification at the level of world rules for chemical pathways based on redox reactions that could lead to violent energy release, such as explosions, manifesting as a drastic reduction in reaction efficiency, a significant increase in energy release thresholds, and an abnormal enhancement of stability, tending towards non-reactivity or low-intensity combustion. Note: this is one of the core shackles maintained by the deities to uphold the existing order and limit mortal energy levels. Non-divine or special rule level means cannot surpass this rule's constraints. Indeed, it was not his folly. It was not his faulty memory or lack of skill. It was this damned world that had been fundamentally locked down by those exalted beings. The gods not only coldly observed the struggles of mortals from above, but also directly intervened to alter the foundational code of the game. Robb savored the term inertial modification at the level of rules, a cold smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. He recalled the devastating nature of wildfire, pondering what made it so explosive. Perhaps it was infused with a mysterious force that evaded the constraints of conventional rules. In the treasure trove of knowledge belonging to the traveler, a page concerning gunpowder and advanced explosives seemed to have been violently torn away by an unseen hand, leaving behind a suffocating void. Yet, has the path of the conqueror ever been halted by shackles? Chapter 30, Long Lake Steel, the Edge of Iron. His gaze shifted to the craftsman's district on the opposite side of the castle, where fires burned day and night. There, the very force capable of shattering the barriers of time was being nurtured, thanks to the avant-garde insights brought by Robb, even in fragmented form. Combined with the astonishing craftsmanship of Connor Ain, the military-industrial complex of Herrenberg was undergoing a qualitative transformation. The rudimentary reflective furnace they collaboratively constructed significantly enhanced the quality and smelting efficiency of steel. More critically, Robb, leveraging knowledge from the future, identified soft manganese, or among the assorted minerals collected. After numerous trials, the alloy steel infused with manganese was christened Long Lake Steel by Robb, successfully concealing its true origin and composition. Thank the heavens, it seemed the gods had not rendered the possibility of alloy steel obsolete. After rigorous testing, the performance of Long Lake Steel overwhelmingly surpassed the ordinary steel commonly employed by the armies of the Seven Kingdoms, achieving strengths, hardness, and toughness more than 16 times superior. The significance of this breakthrough was revolutionary, first manifesting in long-range weaponry. Utilizing the exceptional elasticity and strength of Long Lake Steel, Connor oversaw the production of a batch of steel-arm crossbows. These crossbow bolts possessed astonishing power, with range and penetration exceeding that of any contemporary bow or crossbow, and were further streamlined into hand crossbows suitable for single-handed operation, facilitating cavalry use while also enhancing the lethality of pike and skirmish troops alike. Moreover, a shipment of composite bows, suitable for cavalry, was procured from the continent of Essos. Subsequently, priority was given to crafting arms specifically for Robb and his personal guard. Robb's exclusive plate armor was personally forged by Connor, employing his unique layered forging technique, with the main body constructed from Long Lake Steel. The armor's lines flowed gracefully, exuding a sense of power, and underwent special treatment that rendered a dark luster. It was thin, resilient, and astonishingly protective, akin to raven feathers, reflecting a chilling metallic sheen under light, both mysterious and formidable. Within the plate armor, there was an inner layer also fashioned from Long Lake Steel, providing dual protection. At the center of the breastplate, a rare golden inlay showcased the Stark family crest, the roaring dire wolf. This dire wolf, set against the dark backdrop of the armor, appeared ready to leap forth and devour. Accompanying the armor were a war spear, a horse lance, a longsword, and specially crafted armor-piercing arrows, all forged from Long Lake Steel. Notably, the colossal spear named the Dragon Slayer, measuring 13 feet in length and weighing 90 pounds, shimmered with a cold light, emanating a fearsome aura capable of rending anything asunder. While even the strongest of men would find it arduous to lift in the hands of Robb, who inherited the divine strength of the Western Shu overlord, it would become a nightmare on the battlefield. These weapons are sharper and more resilient than any steel weapons of the past. The initial batch of Long Lake Steel weaponry and armor has been prioritized for the members of Robb's elite Ironfire Military Academy, as well as other selected elite soldiers. When 600 members of the Guard donned their uniform dark armor, wielding Long Lake Steel weapons and forming ranks in the training grounds, an overwhelming aura of menace enveloped the scene. They resembled a pack of iron wolves emerging from the depths of the underworld, silent yet brimming with explosive potential. Every observer felt a tremor of trepidation upon witnessing this formidable assembly. Behold, it is His Majesty's new armor. The sheen and the imposing presence of the Guard. Each one seems capable of taking on 10 foes. Is this truly Long Lake Steel? I have heard it rivals Valyrian steel. The soldiers watching the training murmured in hushed tones, their eyes alight with fervor and envy. This immediate impact of witnessing such powerful armaments significantly bolstered morale and satisfied the soldiers' psychological yearning for strength and prowess. Robb stood tall upon the commanding platform, surveying his elite force. He understood that fangs forged of steel could just as easily rend apart any adversary daring enough to obstruct his path. The military workshop in Harrenhal operated at full capacity, churning out long-lake steel weapons and armor in a steady stream. Though the production was limited, it was sufficient to ensure that the core fighting force was prioritized for rearmament. Concurrently, Robb enacted a formal military pay regulation to incentivize the troops. The main officers and soldiers would receive an annual base salary of 1 gold dragon. This would apply equally to both soldiers and officers, intended to guarantee their personal dignity and that of their immediate families, allowing them to focus without concern. Officers would receive additional allowances commensurate with their specific ranks. The defensive soldiers would be paid 80% of the corresponding base salary of the main force. Reserve soldiers would receive 50% of the main force's base salary, with those excelling in training and assessments eligible for supplemental rewards. Militias would not have fixed pay, however. During concentrated training and combat missions, they would enjoy free meals and daily stipends, with additional rewards for those who distinguished themselves. This military pay system, far surpassing any customs in Westeros, ignited the soldiers' loyalty and valor to an unparalleled degree. Following Robb, they could not only live with dignity, but also aspire to achieve wealth and honor for their families. Han Xin, Hellos, and Count Jason Mallister were stationed in Harrenhal and its surrounding strongholds, tasked with training troops, eradicating bandits, and fortifying defenses. Robb, fully aware of Han Xin's talents, granted them the authority to make real-time decisions, allowing for adaptability should an opportunity for battle arise. To stifle a genius is the greatest folly of all. Everything was being meticulously prepared. Meanwhile, a secret campaign had already commenced. The Hound, Sandor Clegane, who had formally surrendered, returned to the great city with a select group of intel specialists, leveraging his familiarity with King's Landing. Their mission was to seek an opportunity to rescue Sansa Stark, who was trapped within the lion's den. In the stillness of the night, Robb stood alone atop the highest tower of Harrenhal. The night sky was profound, adorned with countless stars, yet to him, each star appeared as a cold, indifferent eye of a deity gazing down upon the world. The constraints of rules compelled him to clench his fists, the steel gauntlets shimmering with a ghostly light under the moon's glow. Excellent. This only serves to affirm your fears. You dread the prospect of mortals wielding the power to challenge the divine realm. Do you believe that by stifling gunpowder, you can rest easy? That you can forever confine humanity within the barriers you have constructed? The might of a sovereign within him stirred like a dormant volcano, awakening to his master's will and beginning to surge forth. This was a power of an entirely different paradigm, rooted in blood and vitality, in the will, and derived from an acute understanding of the cosmic laws and the ultimate development of one's potential. Such a force is fundamentally anchored in a profound comprehension of the essence of the world and the human body. On some level, it even resonates with science and matter, belonging to humanity itself, attainable through cultivation. Just wait. Robb's voice was deep, yet imbued with a resolute determination. First to unleash this torrent of steel to crush your earthly agents, in that ludicrous order. Then he lifted his gaze, his eyes seeming to ignite with flames, poised to pierce the infinite expanse of the starry sky. I shall ascend personally to witness what this so-called divine will truly is.